My name is Anna. I'm an editor at one of the big publishing houses downtown, just a regular girl who likes to keep things straightforward. Life's always been a hustle, what with juggling deadlines and squeezing in some me time. That's probably why I never really got into the whole dating scene much. I preferred my own company, usually with a good book or a quiet walk in the park near my apartment. But that all changed one sunny Saturday that seemed just like any other. I was deep into a podcast, strolling along without a care in the world. The park was buzzing with people and their pets, kids running around, it was lively. I guess I lost track of where I was walking because the next thing I knew, a guy on a bicycle nearly collided with me. "Watch it," he yelled, swerving at the last second. His tone was harsh, the annoyance clear in his voice. "I'm so sorry," I blurted out, pulling out one earbud. I hadn't realized I'd wandered onto the bike path. He stopped his bike and turned around, looking more amused than angry now. "You gotta watch where you're going. This path's a jungle sometimes." "Yeah, my bad. Totally my fault," I admitted, feeling a bit embarrassed. I brushed a stray lock of hair from my face and gave him a sheepish smile. He laughed, and just like that, the tension dissolved. "I'm Tom," he said, extending a hand. "Anna," I replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "So, Anna, always this distracted, or is it just my charming presence?" He had this cheeky grin that made me chuckle. "Just a long week at work. My brain's off enjoying the weekend already." "Fair enough. I was just about to grab a coffee at that place over there." He pointed to a small cafe at the edge of the park. "Care to join me? You know, as a peace offering for almost sending me flying." I considered it for a moment. He seemed nice, and honestly, I could use a coffee. Sure, why not? I could use a good coffee story to tell. As we walked to the cafe, Tom was easy to talk to. He told me about his job at a car sales company and how he liked to spend his weekends biking or hanging out with friends. He wasn't from the city, he moved here because he thought it offered more opportunities. "You know, big city dreams and all that," he said with a smirk. I shared a bit about my job too, how I loved books and ended up making a career out of that passion. "Beats being stuck in a cubicle doing something you hate," I added. We reached the cafe and ordered our coffees. While we waited, I couldn't help but notice how comfortable I felt around him. It was strange because usually, I'm a bit reserved around new people. But with Tom, the conversation just flowed. After meeting Tom, we started hanging out more. He was funny and easygoing, but it wasn't long before I started noticing little things that bugged me. It was nothing major at first, just small comments here and there that made me raise an eyebrow. One Saturday, we decided to go out for dinner, and somehow, the topic of careers and family came up. We were just chatting about work and life, nothing serious, or so I thought. "So, how's the book world treating you?" Tom asked, taking a sip of his beer. "It's busy, as always. Deadlines don't stop for anyone," I replied, poking at my salad. "Yeah, I get that. But you wouldn't want to be stuck in that forever, right? I mean, eventually, you'd want to settle down, maybe cut back on the work hours," he said, casually. I paused, fork midair. "Not really, Tom. I love what I do. I don't see myself giving it up anytime soon or ever, really." Tom shrugged. "Sure, but what about when we have kids? Wouldn't you want to be around more?" The question caught me off guard. "We?" I chuckled nervously. "That's jumping way ahead, don't you think?" He laughed it off. "Yeah, you're right. Just thinking out loud, I guess." I tried to shake off the discomfort, but it lingered. A couple of weeks later, Tom invited me to have dinner with his parents. I figured it was a good sign, things getting serious and all. I was nervous, but hopeful. That dinner, though, it opened my eyes a bit more. His parents lived in a cozy, well-kept house in the suburbs. His mom, Mrs. Reed, was all smiles when we arrived. Anna, so lovely to finally meet you. Tom has told us so much about you, she gushed, pulling me into a hug. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Reed. It's great to meet you too, I managed to say, returning her smile. Dinner was served, and everything was going well until Mrs. Reed started talking about family and marriage. You know, Tom was always the responsible one, she began, serving herself some more potatoes. We've always told him the importance of finding a good girl who knows her way around the house. Tom's dad nodded. Absolutely. It's about building a good foundation, you know? A man needs to provide, and a woman, well, she takes care of the home. I glanced at Tom, hoping he'd say something, but he just focused on his food. Mrs. Reed continued. It's how we raised our boys. Family first, right, Tom? Right, Mom, Tom said, finally looking up. His agreement felt like a punch to the gut. I tried to keep my cool. It's interesting because I've always been pretty career-oriented. I love my job, and I believe in contributing equally. Mrs. Reed smiled, a bit too sweetly. Of course, dear. But you'll see, priorities change when you start having children. It's only natural for a woman to want to stay at home with her babies. The rest of the evening, I felt like I was in a fog. We left shortly after dinner, and on the drive back, the air between us was tense. Your mom has some strong opinions about family roles, I said, breaking the silence. Do you see things that way too? He hesitated, then said, I think there's some truth to it. I mean, it worked for my parents. Despite the uneasy dinner with Tom's parents, our relationship marched forward. Somehow, the good times seemed to outweigh the bad, and I found myself agreeing to marry him. Looking back, love must have blinded me, because those warning bells were still ringing in the back of my mind. The wedding planning started, and it was all a whirlwind. Tom wanted something simple, and so did I. We decided on a modest ceremony with just close family and friends. As the day approached, the real pressure began to mount, not about the event, but about what our lives would become afterward. After the ceremony, at the reception, Tom's mom pulled me aside. Her smile was wide, but her eyes were serious. Anna, dear, I'm so happy for you both. Remember, a good wife supports her husband, no matter what. Thank you, Mrs. Reed. I intend to be a supportive partner, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. And remember, dear, when the babies start coming, it's best if you're at home. You can't trust strangers to raise your children. Her words felt like a warning, and the finality in her tone made my stomach turn. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Later, Tom and I had a moment alone. Your mom talked to me about kids and me not working, I started, watching his reaction closely. Yeah? She's just looking out for the future. She means well, Anna. You know how moms are. Tom brushed it off, taking a sip of his champagne. But you know I'm not planning to quit my job, right? Even when we have kids, I pressed, needing him to understand. Tom paused, his face serious. We'll see, Anna. Things change. We'll do what's best for our family. After our wedding, Tom suggested we move to a larger apartment, closer to his work at the car sales company. The place was nice, bigger than our old one, but it was right next door to his parents' house. I had my suspicions about why he chose this particular spot, but I agreed, hoping for the best. Once settled, the reality of our new life together began to surface. Tom started bringing up his idea of a traditional family more often, where he would be the breadwinner and I would handle the household and eventually, the kids. One evening, we sat down with our finances spread across the dining table, a mess of bills and budgets under the dim light. I tried to show him how keeping both our jobs was more beneficial, especially with the economy being unstable. Look at these numbers, Tom. With both incomes, we're not just getting by, we're actually saving. It makes no sense for me to quit my job, I said, pointing at the spreadsheet. Tom shook his head, pushing the papers away slightly. It's not just about the money, Anna. It's about having a real family life. You know, like my parents had. I sighed, my frustration growing. But it's not the past, Tom. Things are different now. We both need to contribute. He didn't seem convinced, and the discussion ended with a heavy silence. The situation got more complicated with his mother, Mrs. Reed, living so close. She dropped by often, unannounced, each visit with a new critique about how I was managing our home. One afternoon, I was sorting through some work emails when she came in. Without a greeting, she started inspecting the house, wiping her finger along the bookshelf looking for dust. Anna, you really should focus more on keeping a cleaner house. A dusty home is not a healthy home, she said, her tone sharp. I clenched my teeth, trying to keep my cool. I cleaned yesterday, Mrs. Reed. And I work full-time. It's just a little dust. That's just it, you work too much. If you were home more, maybe things wouldn't slip through, she countered, walking over to the linen closet next. She pulled out a sheet, checking for any signs of improper laundering. I followed her, my hands balled into fists at my sides. I manage my time just fine, Mrs. Reed. Tom and I are both happy with how things are. She tooted, shaking her head as she moved to the kitchen to scrutinize the contents of our fridge. A woman's place is taking care of her home and her husband. These modern ideas about women needing careers are nonsense. Every comment stung, and I felt my defenses rise. Maybe that worked for you, but I'm not you. I won't just quit my job to become someone I'm not. When Tom came home that evening, I tried to explain how suffocating his mother's visits were becoming. He listened, but his response chilled me. Mom's just trying to help, Anna. She has a lot of experience running a home. But it's our home, not hers. I need you to stand up for me, for us, I pleaded. Tom looked torn, but he finally said, She's my mom, Anna. She means well. We should at least consider her advice. The argument that night was long and painful. We went to bed angry, the first of many silent nights. As the days turned into weeks, I felt more like an intruder in my own home, constantly judged and found wanting. The pressure to conform to an outdated idea of a wife was relentless, and my resolve to maintain my independence was tested every day. As the months rolled by, Tom's nagging about me not pulling my weight at home started to increase. He'd come home from work, look around with a scowl, and comment on the dusty shelves or the dinner that was either too bland or overcooked, because I'd rushed it after a long day at the publishing house. His favorite refrain became, If you can't manage both, maybe you shouldn't be working. One evening, after a particularly harsh critique of some slightly undercooked pasta, Tom let it drop. Anna, I'm serious. If you can't meet me halfway and take care of the house properly, maybe we should rethink this whole arrangement, he said, implying that a divorce was on the table. I loved Tom, despite everything. I didn't want our marriage to fail over something like this, so I made a decision that pained me deeply. The next day, I talked to my boss, Ellen, about quitting my job to become a full-time housewife. Ellen was shocked and tried to persuade me otherwise. Anna, you're one of our best. Are you sure about this? She asked, concern etching her features. I don't see any other way, Ellen. I have to try to make things work at home, I admitted, feeling defeated. Ellen, ever the problem solver, proposed a compromise. What if you could work from home? Manage your projects remotely. It's becoming more common now. You wouldn't have to quit. The idea seemed like a lifeline. I agreed to the arrangement but decided not to tell Tom. Instead, I told him I had resigned. He was overjoyed, thinking I had chosen our home life over my career. So, I started my new job as a housewife, seeing Tom off to work each morning and greeting him when he came home. But as soon as he left, I'd power up my laptop and dive into my editing work. It was a strange double life, but it worked. The money I earned from my remote job, I secretly saved in a separate bank account, just in case. However, living on just Tom's salary was tougher than we'd thought. Despite my best efforts to economize, 3 months later, we were scraping the bottom of the barrel. I tried to bring up the topic gently. Tom, I think it might be necessary for me to go back to work. We're running through our savings too fast. Tom's reaction was swift and angry. That's because you're spending too much. You need to learn how to save properly, he snapped. I was stunned. I hadn't bought anything for myself in months and always hunted for the cheapest deals at the supermarket. His words hurt deeply, and I felt a mix of anger and humiliation. The next day, his mother came over with a mission to teach me proper budgeting. She dragged me to the store and pointed out the cheapest, often poorest quality products. Buy these, Anna. Stop wasting money on expensive stuff, she lectured as we walked down the aisles. Back home, she showed me how to dilute dish soap to make it last longer. You use too much. You need to make do with less, she instructed, her tone patronizing. She even started checking my receipts, scolding me for any purchase she deemed unnecessary. Why are you buying this? Just stick to basics, she would say, shaking her head in disapproval. Living like this was unbearable. Every day felt more suffocating than the last. I was losing my sense of self to their imposed austerity, living under constant surveillance. The situation was becoming untenable. I was trapped in a life of pretended submission, and every part of me screamed for escape. But for now, I held on, biding my time, and planning my next steps carefully. It all reached a boiling point one drizzly Tuesday evening. I was on the phone in the living room, pouring my heart out to my mom. I just don't know how much more I can take, Mom. His mother is constantly over here, teaching me how to stretch $1 until it screams. I get it, we need to save, but this is too much. Mom's voice was a mix of concern and anger. Anna, that's not normal. You need to have a conversation with Tom about boundaries. It's your home too, not just his or his mother's playground. Just as I was nodding, feeling a bit strengthened by my mom's support, Tom stormed in from the other room, his face red with anger. He must have heard me complaining. He snatched the phone right out of my hand. A wife shouldn't be complaining about her husband and mother-in-law like some street gossip, he snapped into the phone before hanging up. I was shocked, my hands shaking a bit. Tom, you can't just grab my phone and talk to my mom that way. Oh, I can't. Maybe if you had some respect for us, I wouldn't have to. His voice was rising, and I could see the veins in his neck bulging. Tom, listen to yourself. Can't you see this isn't healthy? I pleaded, hoping to reach some part of him that remembered what love felt like. But he was beyond reason. Healthy? My mom was right. I should never have married you. His words cut deeper than I would have expected. That's enough, Tom. I'm your wife, not some puppet you and your mom can control. I shot back, my own anger flaring up now. Then act like it or leave, he shouted, his face just inches from mine. I stared at him, disbelief and sadness warring inside me. You want me to leave? At 4 a.m.? It's dark and pouring rain outside. If you don't like how things are, then yes, get out. His eyes were cold, unyielding. I knew then that nothing I could say would change his mind or the situation. Shaking, I grabbed a few essentials, my laptop, some clothes, and my phone. I went for my purse next, but Tom was quicker. He grabbed it first, holding it out of my reach. You think you're leaving with this? I earned this money, not you. Fine, keep it, I said, my voice hollow. I couldn't believe this was happening. I called a taxi and waited by the door, my heart pounding. The taxi pulled up, and I stepped out into the cold night air, the rain drenching me immediately. As I climbed into the car, a sense of surreal calm settled over me. I was doing this. I was leaving. At the hotel, as I lay in the unfamiliar bed, I couldn't help but feel a surge of relief amidst the turmoil. Despite everything, I hadn't quit my job. My secret savings account, unknown to Tom, was now my lifeline. The first light of dawn was barely peeking through the curtains when I got up. I hadn't slept much, the weight of my decision pressing down on me through the night. Today was the day I would take control back. I had an appointment with a lawyer to talk about filing for divorce. It felt surreal, like a scene from someone else's life, not mine. The lawyer's office was a stark, unassuming place tucked between a row of old brick buildings. Inside, Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, was a straight-talking man who wasted no time. "Let's get down to business," he said as soon as I sat down. "You're here to file for divorce, correct?" "Yes," I confirmed, my voice steadier than I expected. "I can't go back to the way things were." Mr. Henderson nodded, his face serious. "All right. I'll need all the details. Any joint accounts, property, anything that needs untangling." We spent the next hour going over everything. He explained the legal process, what I could expect, and what my rights were. He was thorough, ensuring I understood every step before drawing up the necessary documents. "You'll need to serve these to your husband," he instructed as he handed me the envelope, sealed with a stamp that felt like the seal on my old life. Armed with the divorce papers, I went back to the apartment I had shared with Tom. He was still asleep, probably exhausted from last night's fallout. The apartment felt different as I packed my things. Every item I tucked away marked the end of another shared chapter. By the time I finished packing, Tom was stirring. He wandered into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and clearly confused to see my bags piled by the door. "What's going on?" he mumbled, scratching his head. I didn't have much to say, just actions to take. Instead of answering, I handed him the envelope. "These are for you," I said, my voice void of the emotion I felt churning inside. Tom tore open the envelope, a frown forming as he scanned the contents. "Divorce?" he laughed, disbelief lacing his tone. "You think you can just walk out and everything will be all right?" He looked up from the papers, his eyes cold. "Come back when you're ready to apologize, and maybe I'll consider taking you back. But remember, you'll have to listen to my mother from now on." The absurdity of his words almost made me laugh, but I held it back. "I'm not coming back, Tom. I'm done. We're done." Walking out of that apartment, the air felt different, crisper, almost hopeful. I went straight to a new place I had rented days before, small, but mine alone, a place where I could start rebuilding. Each step felt heavy, but right. A few weeks after moving in, I was back at the office, fully immersing myself in the whirlwind of publishing deadlines and author meetings. Being around my colleagues again, feeling the familiar rush of a fast-approaching deadline, it reignited a spark in me that I thought I had lost. Days at the office turned into weeks, and soon, I was back to my old routine, juggling manuscripts and deadlines with a newfound efficiency, fueled by my recent personal upheavals. It felt good to be back, really good. The familiar landscape of texts and typos was more comforting than I could have imagined. During this time, I reconnected with old friends, people who had known me long before Tom. We gathered for drinks after work, shared meals on weekends, and slowly, I started feeling more like myself than I had in years. Their laughter and light-hearted teasing grounded me, and in their company, I rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten. A few months into this new phase of my life, an unexpected call came. It was Tom. His voice was awkward, tinged with a desperation I wasn't prepared to handle. "Hey, I got laid off. Things are pretty rough," he started, his words stumbling over each other. "I was thinking, maybe you could help me out? Financially?" The request hung in the air, audacious and somewhat insulting, given our history. "And, maybe we could start over. Rebuild. I mean, if you apologize to me and my mom, show some commitment here." His voice trailed off, hopeful yet uncertain. I couldn't help it, I burst out laughing. The sheer absurdity of his proposal, after everything, was too much. "Tom, you really think I'd come back, support you and your parents, after you kicked me out? You're out of your job, and suddenly all your high and mighty principles flew out the window?" There was a pause on the line. "So, that's a no?" He sounded smaller somehow, deflated. "Tom, I'm doing well. Really well. And honestly, I'm enjoying my freedom too much to give it up again. I hope you find your feet, but it won't be with me." My words were firm, the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. After hanging up, I felt a surge of empowerment. Tom's call, although ridiculous, had affirmed something vital for me. I was truly free now, and no offer or plea was going to change that. I'm Harper, and I've never been the type to turn away from love stories where the guy sweeps the girl off her feet. So when Aaron showed up, with all his sweet texts in the morning and calls at night asking about my day, I fell hard. It's almost laughable how quick I was to think, this is it. This is love. My friends, they'd look at us and say we were cut from the same cloth, meant to be. But there was Grandma June, with her head full of wisdom and a lifetime of watching seasons change. She'd always say, Harper, honey, watch the signs. When a man wants all your time, there's a chance he's not just in love. Could be he's trying to own you. I would laugh it off. Nana with her old-timey ideas about men and their ways. Aaron was different, or so I believed. There we were, on an evening that felt like every other evening we'd spent together. Sitting on my worn-out couch, he held my hand a little too tight when he asked about my day. Met anyone interesting at work today? He asked. I'd tell him about the regulars, skipping over the mundane bits. It's the same folks every day, you know that. And no one knew? No one took an interest in you? His tone was casual, but his grip wasn't. Just the usual. Why so curious? I tried to pull my hand away lightly, trying to lighten the mood. Just making sure we're good, that's all, he replied, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. We were drifting with the TV chattering in the background, filling the silence. It was the same subtle pressure I'd felt countless times before but always managed to brush aside. It was then Grandma June's words crept back, making my heart sink a bit. There's a fine line. A warning I never really heeded. The night dragged on. We sat together, but my mind was miles away, tangled in Grandma June's warnings and this knot in my stomach that just wouldn't loosen up. When Aaron left, he took part of my peace with him. Locking the door behind him, I leaned back and let out the breath I'd been holding. I was alone with the silence of my apartment and the whispers of doubt that echoed louder in the space he'd vacated. I thought about calling Grandma June, but it was late, and this was my mess to figure out. As the digital clock on the microwave blinked to the rhythm of my unease, I realized that there's a thin line, all right, between love and a cage. And I was the one who ignored the signs, thinking they were roses instead of the red flags they really were. Aaron and I had said I do, and we started our married life in my little home cloaked in ivy. But after we settled in, things began to change. One night we were sitting on our porch, the air was filled with the scent of the nearby pine trees. Aaron's hand was resting on mine, a bit too firmly, and his voice cut through the calm as he asked, "Who's that new guy working with you?" "Oh, that's just Peter. He's in the marketing department," I replied, trying to sound as neutral as possible. He hummed, and I could see that familiar tension in his jaw. I knew that look, it was the same one he had when he thought something wasn't quite right. Over time, Aaron's questions weren't just questions anymore. They were like probes, digging for something he seemed convinced he'd find. Then he started on my clothes. It was a Sunday morning, and I was picking out a dress for brunch with friends. "That one's pretty," he said, nodding toward a neutral-toned dress. I was thinking of wearing the blue one. "It's more cheerful," I suggested, holding up my favorite dress, the one that made my eyes shine a little brighter. He shook his head. "You'd stand out too much. Wear the other one," he insisted, and it wasn't a suggestion. "But Aaron, it's just a dress," I said, trying to keep the peace. "Just trust me on this, Harper. I'm looking out for you," he said, but it didn't feel like looking out. It felt like locking up. His preferences spilled over from my wardrobe to our social life. Dinners with friends became less frequent, my phone buzzed less, and it wasn't long before those invites stopped coming in altogether. One evening, he flopped down on the couch next to me, a scowl on his face. "Mark called. Wants us to meet them for drinks next Saturday." "Told him we're busy," he said, reaching for the remote. We are? I asked, surprised. I hadn't seen Mark and Laura in weeks. They were our couple friends, the ones we used to double date with regularly. Aaron flicked through the channels, not meeting my eye. We don't need to spend time with them so much. You've got me, and I've got you. That's enough, isn't it? I paused, the words catching in my throat. I should have argued, reminded him that we were our own people, but a part of me was too tired to fight over something I knew I couldn't win. That's enough, I echoed, but it sounded like I was trying to convince myself. This was my life now, a life where what I wore and who I spoke to became territories Aaron felt entitled to claim. And every time I'd let it go, he'd take a little more. I was losing bits of myself, and it wasn't until I came across an old photo of myself laughing with friends that I realized just how much had been chipped away. I looked at the woman in that picture and wondered where her smile had gone. The thing about life is, it's far messier than you'd expect, especially when love ties you down instead of setting you free. That's what it felt like with Aaron lately. Our love felt like walls closing in, disguised as just another part of married life. His new habit? Showing up at my office out of the blue, turning up like he owned the place, and, in a way, like he owned me too. Just in the neighborhood, was his usual line, followed by a too bright smile. One evening at home, I decided to wear my favorite pencil skirt to work the next day. Aaron came into the room, his face twisted up in a way that made me brace myself. "Why do you need to wear that?" he barked, his temper flaring over nothing. "It's just a skirt, Aaron," I said, keeping my voice steady. I didn't want to fight, not again. He didn't buy it. "It's not just anything. Who are you dressing for, huh?" His voice was a sharp jab, his suspicion naked and unashamed. "I dress for myself, Aaron. Since when is that a crime?" I tried to defend my choice, my independence, but even to my ears, I sounded like I was reaching. The next morning rolled around, and my skirt, the one I had planned to wear, was gone. Not just that one, but half of my wardrobe seemed to have just vanished. Panic surged through me, a cold wave that made me dizzy. I found Aaron in the kitchen, his back to me, making coffee like it was any other day. "Where are my clothes, Aaron?" I demanded, my voice edged with fear and anger, a cocktail of emotions that made me sound more like a stranger than a wife. "They weren't appropriate. I did us both a favor," he said, his voice oddly calm, like he was talking about the weather, not my personal belongings. "A favor? By deciding what I can and cannot wear? Are you listening to yourself?" I couldn't hide the shock in my voice, the disbelief that this was my reality. "It's for the best, Harper. You'll thank me later," he replied, and the way he said it, like he knew better, made my skin crawl. I was halfway into the FMLA form when the mask slipped, and Aaron's concern showed its true face: control. My independence, my choices, he was whittling them down, trying to reshape me into something smaller, more contained. Something less me. As I sat at the kitchen table, his words echoing around the silent room, I realized my once warm and loving home had turned into something else. It wasn't safe or comforting. It was a beautifully decorated prison, and the man I married was the warden. The rest of the day passed in a blur. At work, I was a ghost, going through motions, smiling when necessary, but underneath, a storm was raging. I spent hours at my desk, looking at the family pictures on my phone, the ones where Aaron looked like the perfect husband. Now, they just felt like scenes from a different woman's life. That evening, I sat in the car outside the house for a long time, the engine humming softly. Stepping through that door took a strength I wasn't sure I had, because inside that house waited a life that was slowly suffocating me. The door creaked as I finally turned the key and stepped inside. The smell of dinner hit me, and there was Aaron, all smiles and kisses, acting like today was just another day. But it wasn't, and the sad thing was, I wasn't sure if tomorrow would be any different. At work, Mr. Jacobs, my boss, dropped a fat file on my desk. "Got a new project for you, Harper. It's going to need some late nights, but you're the best for the job." "Pleasure's all mine, Mr. Jacobs." I managed a smile, ignoring the sinking feeling in my stomach. At dinner, I broke the news. Aaron's fork clattered against his plate, his eyes narrowing to slits. "You'll quit?" he demanded, words sharp and clear. "Aaron, quitting isn't as easy as you make it sound. I'm good at what I do, and yes, we do need the money," I reminded him, hoping some sense would seep into the conversation. But his fists balled up on the table, his anger as clear as day. "No wife of mine will slave away for some boss's whims," he almost yelled. It was right then that his mother, Evelyn, appeared, like a ghost at our table. Always on cue, always trembling with some kind of worry. "Harper, honey," she started, hands flitting like nervous birds, "can't you just ease up a bit?" For Aaron. It wasn't right. None of it. But I loved him once, and I guess a part of me still clung to that. So I pitched the middle ground. "How about a compromise? I'll work from home. Best of both worlds, right?" Aaron slumped back, the lines on his face smoothing out. "Fine," he muttered, almost sulking, "but no late nights." Evelyn smiled, relieved, her pale eyes finding mine, a silent thank you. "But me?" I felt boxed in, the walls painted by Aaron's temper and framed by Evelyn's worry. As the days turned into weeks, my home office became my world. Aaron's occasional peeks over my shoulder, Evelyn's mid-afternoon calls to check in, or to check up, hard to tell, made sure my leash was short. Work was hectic, enough to keep my mind from wandering to dark places. Mr. Jacobs was a tough old bird, but fair. "You're holding up the fort, Harper," he said in one of our phone check-ins, his voice crackly but kind. "Keep it up." I remember one evening, the sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of tired blue. Aaron sat on the couch, remote in hand, flipping channels without really watching anything. I closed my laptop, my brain fried from hours of numbers and emails. "Work's done for now," I told him, my voice a weekday kind of tired. He grunted, a noise that wasn't yes or no, just Aaron. "I heard you." I joined him on the couch, the cushion sinking under me, weary like my bones. "Out of the blue," he said, "you been talking to Jacobs a lot." "About work, yes. It's work, Aaron," I said, keeping my eyes on the TV, not wanting to start another row. He hummed, that old familiar sound of gears grinding in his head. That's life with Aaron, where my love's blindfold only got tighter, and every step forward felt like 2 steps back. The woman in the mirror started to look like a stranger, her eyes holding questions I was scared to answer. One day I needed a ride and Grandma's place was too far to walk, so I grabbed a taxi. The driver was just some regular guy doing his job. Dropped me off at my place, and that should have been that. Except it wasn't. Aaron was out front waiting, and the sight of me stepping out of the taxi set him off big time. The driver had barely handed me my change before Aaron was on him. "What's going on here, huh?" Aaron snapped, eyes bulging. "Who's this?" "Chill out, Aaron, he's just a taxi driver," I tried to cut in, but Aaron wasn't having it. The driver, seeing trouble, didn't waste a second. Put the car in gear and took off. Smart man. Once we were inside, Aaron was still fuming. He paced back and forth, throwing accusing glances my way. I sighed, not up for the drama. "Really, Aaron? You're freaking out over nothing." "It's not nothing. Who knows what you were doing in there?" Aaron's voice boomed through the small space of our entryway. I rolled my eyes. "Get over yourself." Things settled down after that, but not for long. Couple days later, I caught Aaron snooping through my phone while I was making dinner. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" I barked, snatching the phone from his hands. "I was just..." He trailed off, looking like a kid who got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Do you mind telling me what's so interesting in my phone? I was getting really tired of this." Aaron rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. "I don't know. I guess I was just checking on you. Making sure you're not hiding anything." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Checking on me? Are you for real right now? You think that's okay?" He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I'm sorry, all right? I'm sorry. Won't happen again. You're right, it won't happen again because this is ridiculous. You're acting like a crazy person. My patience was wearing thin. Look, I said I'm sorry, I screwed up. Forgive me, okay? His voice had softened now. He looked like he meant it. I let out a deep breath. I was angry, sure, but not enough to throw everything away, not yet. Fine. But this is it, Aaron. No more acting like a jealous kid. You got to get it together. He nodded, a little too eager. Yeah, of course. I will. I promise. We left it at that. I wanted to believe things would get better. Part of me knew it was a long shot, but I still had hope. I guess that's how it goes sometimes. You see red flags, warning signs, but you just keep driving past them, hoping you'll somehow end up on a different road. It all started one crisp morning when I noticed a car. A nondescript, dark sedan, a little too clean, a little too still. I saw it from my kitchen window, parked on the next street over. No big deal, I thought, it's probably just visiting somebody. But then I saw it again by the grocery store, just sitting a couple of aisles over in the parking lot. And again near the dry cleaner. Same car, same place, like a bad penny that kept turning up. A week of this, and I couldn't brush it off any longer. I needed to know. So on a day when the car tailed me to the local library, I took a detour on my way home. Sure enough, the car was still there, matching my turns, keeping its distance, but always present. When I parked on a side street, the sedan stopped a little way behind me. This was no coincidence. It's funny how your mind doesn't want to believe something's wrong, even when it's staring you in the face. It seemed so stupid, so out of a cheap detective show, but there it was. My heart was racing, a mix of fear and anger bubbling up inside me. I picked up my phone and called the police. I think I'm being followed, I whispered, as though the guy behind me could hear. The police took it seriously. They arrived quickly, talked to the man in the car, and checked his ID. Within minutes, they confirmed my fears. The guy was a private detective, and yep, he was following me. Following me on my husband's dime. I was shaking when I got home, with the police report clutched in my hand. Aaron was there, lounging on the sofa like any other evening, blissfully unaware that his little game was up. Aaron, I yelled, throwing the door open wider than I intended. What the hell is this? He jumped up, startled, his eyes doing that darting thing they do when he's on the back foot. Harper, A private detective, Aaron? I could barely get the words out, my voice was shaking so hard. You have me followed? He started stuttering some excuse, his face flushed and guilty looking. Don't. Just don't. I stopped him, holding up a hand. I couldn't bear to hear any lie he might conjure. You know what? I can't do this. My voice broke, but I pulled myself together. You need to leave, Aaron. His mouth snapped shut. He looked like he might argue, but then he didn't. He just grabbed his coat and left without another word. I was alone, truly alone, and for the first time in years, that didn't scare me. It felt like the only honest thing I'd had in a long time. That day had a weird start to begin with. I was still adjusting to a quieter house since I told Aaron to pack his stuff and leave. The man was many things, but quiet wasn't one of them. The peace was nice, but I got to say, a bit eerie too. And then there's a knock at my door that broke the silence like a dropped plate. Standing there was Mr. Freeman, Aaron's boss. Medium height, always looked like he starched his face along with his shirts. Never really liked him, but today he showed up holding a folder stuffed with papers. He's not here, I said before he could step inside. Mr. Freeman frowned, probably not used to doors not swinging wide for him. I've got some important documents for him. Work stuff. I sighed. If Aaron had $1 for every time he was important, we'd be living in a mansion. Well, he's not here. Can I give them to him when he comes back? Mr. Freeman considered it, then nodded. I suppose. Can I come in for a moment? I've been driving for hours. Guess his car was as fancy as his suit, all black and shiny out there. But sure, I thought, why not? I ushered him inside and waved at the kitchen. Take a seat. You want some tea? He plunked down like a sack of flour, weary from the road or life, hard to tell. Tea would be good, thank you, Harper. I put the kettle on and scooped some leaves into the pot. Professional habit. I used to like playing the good hostess. That's when I saw it through the kitchen window, flames dancing around Mr. Freeman's car like it was celebrating something. I shoved Mr. Freeman's tea towards him, half made. Your car. We bolted outside. And there was Aaron, my estranged husband, smiling like it was his birthday and someone brought him a surprise cake. The crazy in his eyes glinted like the flames. Mr. Freeman blurted out, "My car. What the hell is happening?" Aaron turned towards us, his smile flickering. Hey, Harper. This is for stealing my life. Say hello to your lover. His words slurred with satisfaction, mixed with a decent dose of lunacy. He thought he was getting back at some imagined lover of mine. Mr. Freeman stood frozen, his face shifting from confusion to anger. Aaron, did you do this? Aaron's smile slid off his face faster than ice cream on a hot day when he finally put two and two together. His boss. His wife. His mistake. Boss, I didn't know. Mr. Freeman cut through it all. You set my car on fire thinking it belonged to whom? God, Aaron. I had the contract renewal papers with me. Consider them and your job ashes now. You're done. Aaron fell to his knees quicker than a sack of those same papers, groveling like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Please, Mr. Freeman, I just... Save it. Mr. Freeman's voice was ice. I'm calling the police. The sirens didn't take long. The street filled up like a blocked sink, neighbors, cops, a few pointing phones like we were the evening's cheap entertainment. As the cops slapped cuffs around Aaron's wrists, his knees still dusty from the driveway, I felt 100 weights lifting off me. One fire down, the rest of the mess to clean up. Mr. Freeman just shook his head, looking at what used to be a car. Last I saw of Aaron was him trying to look at me over his shoulder, eyes all rabbit-like with panic. Stepping into my living room felt strange. The whole mess with Aaron was coming to a close. The divorce papers had been filed, and I told him to stay away. He obviously didn't listen, since now he was looking at jail time for torching his boss's car and then some for stalking me. The boss, Mr. Freeman, didn't take too kindly to his car being barbecued. He canned Aaron and then slapped a lawsuit on him. And standing there, I couldn't help but feel a weight lift off my shoulders. Harper, honey, Grandma June called from the kitchen. You need anything? I shook my head, walking in to meet her. Grandma June had this way of slicing through nonsense. Gran, I'm good. But... I should have listened to you about Aaron. She was at the sink, and she turned around, drying her hands on a dish towel. Oh, honey. When will you learn to trust this gut? She patted her belly with a chuckle. I couldn't help but laugh. She always kept it so real. Can't argue with Grandma's gut, I agreed. Afterwards, I sat on the couch, flipping through a magazine but not really reading. It was just noise. Alone again, I felt surer than I had in months. This was the right move. Of course, there'd be more to deal with tomorrow, lawyers, unpacking the mess Aaron left, figuring out money stuff. But tonight, it was just me. I pulled my phone out and texted Mara, my best friend since forever. Free, finally. Wanna come over and crash my solo party? It didn't take long for her to fire back. On my way. Bringing pizza. The rest of the night was going to be easy. No drama, no Aaron. Just pizza, bad TV shows, and good company. I slipped into my comfiest sweatpants and pulled my hair back, finally able to breathe. The future might not look clear yet, but it looked a hell of a lot better than my past. I smiled to myself thinking about it. Uncomplicated, no strings attached, no more walking on eggshells. Yeah, this was how things were going to be from now on, starting right now with the new locks clicking into place. Freedom tasted a lot like pepperoni and cheese tonight, and that was just fine by me.
My name is Vivian, a 30-year-old dentist with my own little clinic in the heart of the city. It's a cozy place, filled with the hum of dental equipment and the occasional laughter of my patients. I've always been ambitious, driven by a passion for my profession and the satisfaction of helping others. But when I step out of my clinic, I step into a completely different world, my life with Tom. Tom is my husband, an office clerk in a nondescript building downtown. He's the kind of man who finds comfort in routine, in the predictable ebb and flow of paperwork and office small talk. We met during our college years, an unlikely pair, the aspiring dentist and the laid-back literature major. Our love story wasn't one of instant fireworks, but rather a slow burn, a gentle warmth that grew over shared coffees and late-night study sessions. Our life together was simple, yet fulfilling. We lived in a modest apartment on the outskirts of the city, decorated with mismatched furniture and framed photos of our travels. Tom had always been content with our modest lifestyle, never one to chase after luxury or extravagance. But things began to shift subtly, almost imperceptibly, as my career took off and his stagnated. One evening, after a long day at the clinic, I found Tom sitting on our old sofa, the one with the frayed edges and the stubborn coffee stain. The TV was on, but he wasn't watching. He seemed lost in thought, a rare furrow creasing his normally smooth forehead. "Hey," I greeted, dropping my bag and sinking next to him. "Tough day." He glanced at me, forcing a smile. "Just the usual. How was the clinic?" "Busy as ever. Mrs. Jenkins came in for her checkup." "You know, she asked about you again," I said, trying to lighten the mood. Tom chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's Mrs. Jenkins for you. Always keeping tabs on us." There was a pause, a silence that stretched uncomfortably. I nudged him gently. "What's on your mind, Tom?" He sighed, turning off the TV. "It's just, do you ever think about how different our worlds are? Your clinic, your patients, and me, just sorting files and answering phones." I studied his face, the lines of worry that seemed out of place. "Our worlds might be different, Tom, but they're not incompatible. I love my job, and I love you. That's all that matters." He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "I know, Vivian, but sometimes, I feel like I'm not contributing enough. You're out there, making good money, building a career, and I'm just, I don't know, coasting along." I took his hand in mine, squeezing it reassuringly. "Tom, you contribute in so many ways. You're the one who makes this house a home. You're the one I come back to after a hectic day, the one who listens to my endless rants about molars and crowns. Your job doesn't define your worth in our relationship or in life." He smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in it. "You always know what to say, Vivian. I just wish I could be more successful, I guess. For you, for us. Success isn't just about money or titles, Tom. It's about being happy, being kind, being there for each other. And you excel at all those things," I said, hoping my words would ease his burden. Life trudged on in its usual rhythm until one day, something extraordinary happened. I remember staring at the pregnancy test, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and disbelief. I was going to be a mom. I couldn't wait to share the news with Tom. That evening, as Tom walked through the door, I could barely contain my excitement. "Tom, guess what?" I blurted out, the moment he stepped in. He raised an eyebrow, hanging his coat. "What? Did Mrs. Jenkins finally admit she has a crush on me?" I laughed, shaking my head. "No, something even better. We're going to have a baby." Tom's eyes widened, and for a moment, he was speechless. Then, a huge grin spread across his face. "Seriously? We're going to be parents?" "Yes." I nodded eagerly, watching his reaction. He wrapped me in a hug, lifting me off the ground. This is amazing, Vivian. I can't believe it. We're going to have a little one running around. I hugged him back, feeling a surge of joy. I know. Can you believe it? You're going to be a dad. He set me down, his face suddenly serious. But wait, what about your work? The clinic? I shrugged. I'll take maternity leave. The clinic will manage. Tom frowned, but that's a long break, Vivian. What about the money? We've got savings, and your salary. We'll be fine, I assured him, though a flicker of worry crossed my mind. Yeah, but it's not the same as your income. We might have to cut back on some stuff, he said, his excitement dimming slightly. I touched his arm. Tom, we'll make it work. This is our baby. It's worth every sacrifice. He nodded slowly. You're right. It's just a lot to take in. But I'm happy, Vivian. Really happy. We spent the evening talking about baby names, nursery themes, and all the things we wanted to teach our child. It was a beautiful bubble of happiness, untainted by the challenges that lay ahead. For a moment, all worries about finances and the future seemed insignificant compared to the life growing inside me. As my belly grew, so did the tension between Tom and me. It was like walking on eggshells in our own home. Tom's mood swings were becoming more frequent, and our conversations, once filled with excitement about our future, were now strained and brief. One evening, I found Tom sitting at the kitchen table, bills spread out in front of him, his forehead creased in worry. What's up? I asked, trying to sound casual as I set down a cup of tea for him. He glanced up, his expression tired. Just looking at our finances. This baby is going to be expensive, Vivian. I took a seat beside him. We knew that, Tom, but we'll manage. We always do. He shook his head. It's not just the baby. It's everything. Your maternity leave, the clinic, our savings. I reached out to touch his hand, but he pulled away. Tom, talk to me. What's really bothering you? It's just, he sighed heavily. I feel useless, Vivian. You're there, doing everything, and what am I doing? Just adding more stress. Hey, you are not useless, I said firmly. You're going to be a father. That's something. He scoffed, a father who can't even provide properly for his family. Some role model I'll be. His words stung, but I tried to keep my voice even. Tom, we're in this together. You're not alone in this. Feels like it, though, he muttered, standing up abruptly. I need some air. I watched him grab his coat and head out the door, feeling a mix of frustration and worry. Our talks were turning into one-sided conversations, and I felt helpless watching him pull away. The days turned into weeks, and Tom started coming home late, reeking of alcohol. One night, I confronted him as he stumbled through the door. Where have you been? It's past midnight. He shrugged off his coat, avoiding my gaze. Out with the guys. Needed to blow off some steam. At a bar? Really, Tom? I couldn't hide my disappointment. What's it to you? I'm not allowed to have some fun, he retorted, his voice rising. It's not about having fun. It's about being responsible. We have a baby on the way, for God's sake. He laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm well aware. How could I forget with you constantly reminding me? I felt a pang of hurt. That's not fair, Tom. I'm worried about you, about us. He shook his head. Save it, Vivian. I don't need a lecture. The tension in our home had become a constant companion, but nothing prepared me for the night when it all came crashing down. I was 7 months pregnant, feeling heavy and tired, longing for a quiet evening. That's when I heard the front door burst open and a raucous laughter fill our once peaceful home. Stunned, I walked into the living room to find Tom, drunk, surrounded by his buddies, all of them carrying the stench of alcohol and cigarettes. Empty beer cans were already littering the floor. What the hell, Tom? I blurted out, my voice shaking with anger and shock. Tom, swaying slightly, grinned at me. Hey, Vivian, we're just having some fun. Lighten up. This is our home, not a bar. Look at this mess. I gestured around, feeling my heart race. One of Tom's friends, a loud guy named Rick, slurred, "Come on, lady, let the man have some fun. You're always keeping him on a tight leash." I felt a flash of anger. Excuse me? This is my house too. I don't need this, especially not now. Tom stumbled over to me, trying to put an arm around my shoulder. Vivian, don't be like that. We're just blowing off steam. Blowing off steam? You call this blowing off steam? I pushed his arm away, feeling a mix of disgust and disbelief. Yeah, what's your problem, Vivian? I work hard, I deserve to relax, Tom shot back, his words slurred. You're going to be a father, Tom. Is this the example you want to set? I was almost shouting now, my patience fraying. Tom's face hardened. I don't need a lecture from you, Vivian. I know what I'm doing. No, you clearly don't. I countered, my voice trembling. His friends, sensing the tension, started to shuffle awkwardly. Maybe we should go, man, one of them muttered. No, stay. Have fun. Seems like that's all that matters to you. I said bitterly, turning away from Tom. I retreated to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. The sounds of their laughter and chatter pierced through the walls, a stark contrast to the tears that started to roll down my cheeks. I felt alone, scared, and utterly helpless. My husband, the man who once promised to stand by me, was now a stranger, choosing booze and buddies over our family. The next morning, I woke up to find the house silent but trashed. Tom was sprawled on the couch, snoring, surrounded by the remnants of last night's party. As I started to clean up, trying to hold back my tears, Tom woke up. Vivian, he began, rubbing his eyes. Save it, Tom. I don't want to hear any excuses. Look at this mess. Look at what you've become, I said quietly, my voice laced with sadness. He tried to stand up, staggering slightly. I'm sorry, Vivian. I didn't mean. You didn't mean what? To scare me? To disrespect our home? To forget that we're about to have a baby? I interrupted him, my frustration boiling over. The day our son was born was a whirlwind of emotions. I was in the hospital, enduring the pains of labor, while Tom paced nervously in the room. Despite the chaos, I remember feeling a sense of anticipation, knowing that our lives were about to change forever. In between the intense bouts of pain, I caught Tom's eye. You're doing great, Vivian, he said, trying to sound confident, but I could hear the worry in his voice. I managed a weak smile, gripping his hand tightly. Just stay with me, Tom. Then, after hours that seemed like an eternity, our son was born. I was exhausted, but the moment I heard his first cry, a wave of relief and joy washed over me. I looked up at Tom, expecting to share this overwhelming moment, but he was distracted, sending a text message. Tom, our son. I said, a mix of happiness and disappointment in my voice. Yeah, he's great, Vivian. Just letting the guys know, he replied, not meeting my eyes. I felt a pang of sadness, realizing that this moment, so precious to me, was just another event for Tom to report to his friends. Back at home, things didn't get any better. Tom's enthusiasm for our son was fleeting, and his frequent absences left me feeling increasingly alone. One evening, when he returned home late again, I confronted him. Where have you been, Tom? Do you even care about your family? He shrugged off his coat, avoiding my gaze. Needed a break, Vivian. It's tough for me too, you know. Tough for you? I was astounded. I'm here all day with our son, and you're out taking breaks. I didn't sign up for this constant pressure, Vivian. You've changed. You're always so stressed, he retorted. changed? I'm a mother now, Tom. What's your excuse? I shot back, my frustration boiling over. He didn't respond, just walked away, leaving me standing there, holding our crying son. Then, one morning, I received a phone call that confirmed my worst fears. It was from Tom's employer, informing me that Tom had been fired for showing up to work drunk. I was stunned, not just by the fact that he had lost his job, but that he had kept it from me. One evening, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Tom, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm as I walked into the living room where he was sprawled on the couch. He glanced up, uninterested. "About what?" "About you, us, this situation. You've been out of work for weeks now, and you're not even looking for a job. We can't go on like this," I said, frustration building inside me. Tom took a sip of his beer. "So what? I lost my job. Big deal. I'll find something eventually." "Eventually?" "Tom, we have a baby to take care of, bills to pay. You need to start taking this seriously," I pressed, trying to get through to him. He shrugged. "Why don't you go back to work then? You make good money." I took a deep breath. "That's exactly what I'm planning to do. But I need you to step up. You could stay home, look after our son." Tom sat up, his expression turning from disinterest to disbelief. "What? Me, a house husband? No way. My friends would never let me live that down." "Seriously? You're worried about what your friends might think? What about what's best for our family?" I couldn't hide my disbelief. "Look, Vivian, I'm a man, okay? Men don't just sit around at home changing diapers and feeding babies," he retorted, his tone defiant. I felt my temper rising. "Being a man is about taking responsibility, Tom. It's about doing what's needed for your family, not about fitting into some outdated stereotype." Tom laughed mockingly. "Oh, so now you're going to lecture me about being a man? You have no idea. This isn't about lecturing, Tom. It's about reality. We're in trouble here, and you're just escaping into your little world where everything's fine," I said, my voice shaking with anger. He stood up, facing me. "I don't need to justify myself to you, Vivian. I'm not going to be some stay-at-home dad while you go off and play the hero. That's not who I am." The conversation escalated quickly, our voices raised, words thrown like daggers. It ended with Tom storming out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I was left standing there, feeling a mixture of anger, disappointment, and a deep, growing sense of despair. I returned home one evening to find Tom slumped in his usual spot on the couch, a bottle in hand. His eyes were unfocused, his demeanor that of a man defeated by his own choices. "Tom, this has to stop," I said firmly, standing in the doorway, grocery bags still in hand. "You're destroying yourself, and you're hurting us in the process." He glanced at me, a sneer forming on his lips. "Oh, here comes the perfect wife to lecture me again. What's it this time, Vivian?" "It's not a lecture. It's the truth. Look at yourself, Tom. Look at what you're doing to our family," I replied, my voice laced with frustration. He let out a bitter laugh. "Family? You mean you and the kid? I'm just the extra baggage, right?" "You're not baggage, Tom. You're my husband, the father of our child. But you need to own up to your responsibilities," I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Tom stood up abruptly, his stance unsteady. "Responsibilities? Like what? Being the man you want me to be? I'm sick of your expectations, Vivian. This isn't about my expectations. It's about doing what's right for your family," I exclaimed, feeling my anger rise. He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. "You always think you're so right, don't you? Always playing the victim." I held my ground, despite the fear creeping in. "I'm not playing the victim, Tom. I'm trying to save our family." In a flash, his hand struck my face, a sharp pain radiating across my cheek. I stumbled back, shock and fear overwhelming me. "You hit me," I whispered, my hand instinctively going to my stinging cheek. "Yeah, I hit you." "What are you gonna do about it?" he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. Trembling, I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the police, Tom. I won't let you hurt me or our son." His expression changed from anger to panic. "No, Vivian, wait. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." But I was already dialing. "It's too late for sorry, Tom. You crossed a line." As the police arrived and handcuffed Tom, he kept repeating his apologies, begging me to drop the charges. But I stood firm, watching as they led him away. The man who had once been my partner, my confidant, was now a stranger, his actions unforgivable. 2 years had passed since the night I called the police on Tom. Our lives had diverged onto completely different paths. I was now a single mother, juggling my career and my son, while Tom, well, I hardly knew anything about his life anymore. One day, I received a call from an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered, and a familiar voice came through the line. "Vivian, it's me, Tom." His voice sounded rough, weary. "What do you want, Tom?" I asked, my guard immediately up. I need to see you, Vivian. Can we meet?" There was a pleading tone in his voice, one I hadn't heard before. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him in a public place, a small cafe downtown. When I saw him, I barely recognized him. The man who sat across from me was a shadow of the Tom I once knew. His eyes were tired, his face unshaven, and he seemed to have aged far beyond his years. "Vivian, I'm sorry," he started, his voice faltering. "For everything." I looked at him, feeling a mix of pity and resentment. "Your apologies won't change the past, Tom. I know. I've messed up, big time. But I've been sober for 6 months now. I'm trying to turn my life around," he said, looking down at his hands. I sighed. "That's good to hear, Tom. But why tell me? Why now?" He hesitated before speaking. "I've been fired from my last job because of my drinking. I've hit rock bottom, Vivian. I have nothing left. I was hoping, maybe you could help me. Lend me some money." I felt a pang in my heart, but my resolve was firm. "I can't do that, Tom. You need to figure this out on your own. Please, Vivian, I'm begging you." "I have nowhere else to turn," he pleaded, desperation in his eyes. I shook my head. "No, Tom. Helping you financially is not the solution. You need to take responsibility for your life. I have our son to think about." He looked defeated, his shoulders slumping. "I understand. I just wanted to try." We parted ways, and as I walked away, I felt a sense of closure. It was a bittersweet feeling, knowing that the man I once loved was now a stranger, but also a sense of relief that I had moved on, building a life for myself and my son.
The day I met Alex, I was running late for work, which was nothing new, but losing my coffee order in the shuffle at the cafe was the cherry on top of my hectic morning. As I stood there, trying to argue with the barista that I hadn't ordered a double-shot espresso, but a simple latte, this guy stepped in with a smirk, holding up the wrong cup like a peace offering. "Looks like I got your order by mistake," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "Sorry about that. Let me make it up to you by buying your correct order. What were you having?" I was taken aback, not just by the mix-up, but by his forwardness. Just a latte, thanks. But you don't have to." "Nonsense," he interrupted, waving his hand dismissively at the barista to signal another order. "I insist. It's the least I can do for the inconvenience. By the way, I'm Alex." "I'm Kimberly. I replied, still a bit thrown off by his charm, but starting to smile despite myself. There's something about a confident man that can turn a mundane morning upside down. We ended up sitting together, sipping our correctly ordered coffees this time, and chatting about everything and nothing. He had a way of making even the most trivial stories sound interesting. Before I knew it, I was late for work, not that I cared much at that moment. You know, I should really get going, I said reluctantly, checking the time on my phone. Let me grab your number before you run off. I feel like this conversation isn't finished, Alex said, his blue eyes locking with mine in a way that felt like a dare. Normally, I'd hesitate, but something about him felt different. So, I found myself reciting my number, and he promised to call. True to his word, Alex called the next morning. Hey, Kimberly, it's Alex. From the coffee mix-up, remember? Just wanted to make sure you started your day on the right foot this time. I laughed, charmed by his memory and persistence. Well, thanks, Alex. I'm actually on time today, believe it or not. That's great to hear. Maybe I'm your good luck charm. Listen, would you be up for dinner tonight? His directness caught me off guard again, but I found myself agreeing. Our first date was as unconventional as our meeting, filled with laughter, playful banter, and an ease I hadn't felt in a long time. From that night on, our whirlwind romance took off at breakneck speed. Alex was attentive in ways I hadn't experienced before. He'd call me every morning, his voice a comforting constant that started my day. Morning, sunshine. What's on the agenda today? He'd ask, genuinely interested in the mundanities of my life. And every evening, without fail, so, how was your day? Tell me everything. My friends noticed the change in me. Girl, you're glowing. This guy must be something special, they'd tease, and I couldn't deny it. They were envious, comparing Alex's attentiveness to their own relationships, which suddenly seemed lackluster in comparison. Only my grandmother, with her years of wisdom and skepticism, voiced any concern. Be careful, Kimberly, she warned one evening over the phone. A man that needs to know your every move sounds like he's more interested in controlling than caring. I brushed her worries aside. Oh, Grandma, you're just old-fashioned. Alex is just attentive, that's all. But deep down, a tiny part of me wondered if there was truth to her words. Was Alex's constant check-ins a sign of love or something more possessive? I shook the thought away, unwilling to tarnish the fairy tale I found myself living. Our wedding was something out of a magazine, honestly. If you'd told me a year ago I'd be getting hitched to Mr. Right, I'd have laughed in your face. But there I was, saying I do to Alex, the guy who swept me off my feet with a latte mix-up. Sounds like a rom-com, doesn't it? After the honeymoon phase, which was all sorts of amazing, we settled into my house. It was an old place I inherited from my folks, cozy and just right for two. Or so I thought. The warning signs started small. Alex always wanted to know who's who at my job. So, who's on your team again? Any guys I should know about? He'd ask, trying to sound casual, but failing miserably. Just the usual crew, you know, Tom and Jerry, I'd joke, trying to lighten the mood. But Alex wasn't looking for laughs. I'm serious, Kim. I gotta know who's trying to hit on my wife. Chill, Alex. It's an accounting firm, not a nightclub. The most excitement we get is when the coffee machine breaks. But the joke stopped when he took issue with my wardrobe. You're wearing that to work? He'd frown, eyeing a skirt that barely hit above the knee. Yeah? It's just a skirt, Alex. What's the big deal? The big deal? It's too short. What are you trying to do, distract every guy there? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's a normal skirt, for God's sake. Since when do you dictate what I wear? Since I noticed guys checking you out. It's not happening, Kim. It got worse from there. He'd trash anything he didn't approve of. Bright colors, skirts, even a pair of heels. Too flashy. he'd say, as if I was dressing for someone else, not myself. One evening, he decided meeting me from work should be a thing. Just making sure you get home safe, he claimed. More like checking up on me. Why the sudden interest in my commute? You know I can handle myself. I confronted him after a week of this. I don't trust those guys you work with, especially your boss. My boss? Really, Alex? He's like 60 and happily married. Doesn't matter. I've seen how these old guys look at young women. The last straw was when he demanded I quit my job because my boss was a man. You've lost it, Alex. I love my job, and I'm not quitting because of your insecurities. He stormed out, and later, I heard him on the phone with his mom, ranting about how unreasonable I was being. Next thing I knew, his mom was at our door, asking me to be gentle with Alex's feelings. I was at a loss. Here I was, newly married, and already caught in a battle I didn't choose. Alex's jealousy was turning my dream into a nightmare, and no amount of talking seemed to get through to him. I loved him, but at what cost? The thing with Alex got worse bit by bit. It started with those nagging comments about me going to work, and before I knew it, it was full-blown arguments every other night. One night, things got real heated, and Alex stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him so hard I thought the glass would shatter. That's when his mom, who'd been sitting quietly, trying to pretend she wasn't there for the whole showdown, finally spoke up. You know, his ex did a number on him, she said, her voice low, like she was sharing a state secret. Cheated on him with some guy she worked with. That's why he's like this. I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and sympathy. I get that, but it's not fair to me. I'm not her. I know, darling, I know. But maybe, have you thought about seeing someone? Like a therapist? I had, of course, but getting Alex to agree was a different story. I've tried. He won't hear of it. Thinks it's a bunch of nonsense. His mom nodded, looking as defeated as I felt. He's stubborn, always has been. But something's gotta give, Kimberly. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner where Alex had grilled me about talking to the delivery guy for too long, I decided it was time for a serious chat. Alex, we need to talk. This, whatever this is, it's not healthy, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. What's not healthy? Me caring about my wife? He scoffed, crossing his arms defensively. It's not caring when you're tracking my every move, Alex. It's controlling, and it's suffocating. He rolled his eyes. Here we go again. Kim, you're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? Am I really? Because I feel like I can't breathe without you questioning me. Your mom thinks we should see someone, you know, a therapist. No way. He shot back, like I'd suggested something outrageous. I'm not airing our dirty laundry to some stranger. It's not dirty laundry, Alex. It's trying to fix what's broken, I argued, but it was like talking to a brick wall. In the end, I was at my wit's end. I loved Alex, but living like this was tearing me apart. So, I made a call to my boss, explained a bit of the situation without going into too much detail, and asked if I could work from home. Whatever you need, Kimberly. You're valuable to us, and if this helps, consider it done, my boss said, more understanding than I'd hoped for. When I told Alex, he was surprisingly okay with it. Fine, if that's what it takes, he said, almost relieved. But that relief? It was short-lived. The peace was fragile, like walking on eggshells. I'd bought some time, but deep down, I knew this was far from over. Working from home was supposed to be the solution, but if anything, it felt like I'd just trapped myself. Alex's jealousy didn't let up, it morphed into something even more suffocating. One day, the doorbell rang. It was just a courier dropping off a package I'd ordered online. Who's that? Alex barked from the living room, his voice sharp with suspicion. Just the courier, I called back, signing off for my package. He was at my side in seconds, peering over my shoulder as if he'd catch a glimpse of some secret affair in the brief exchange. Seems like you're ordering a lot these days. Meeting new friends? I couldn't believe my ears. Are you serious right now? It's just work stuff, Alex. His glare lingered a moment longer before he stormed off, muttering under his breath. I shook my head, disbelief turning to anger. This was no way to live. It didn't stop there. Every call I had to make for work, he'd be lurking nearby, trying to listen in. If I laughed a little too hard at a colleague's joke, there'd be hell to pay later. The day he lost it over a taxi ride was the day I knew something had to change. I'd gone to visit my parents, a rare outing these days, and decided to take a taxi home. As soon as I walked through the door, Alex was on me like a hawk. Who was that guy? He demanded, his eyes wild. The taxi driver, Alex. What on earth are you on about? Don't play dumb, Kimberly. I saw you, laughing and chatting with him. Planning your next rendezvous? My jaw dropped. You can't be serious. He was just being polite. You know, small talk? The thing normal people do? His accusations were ridiculous, but they hurt all the same. It was clear he didn't trust me, not one bit. And then, the final straw, I caught him snooping through my phone one evening, looking for evidence of an affair that existed only in his head. That's it, Alex. I exploded, snatching my phone from his hands. I can't do this anymore. Your jealousy is out of control. He tried to apologize, begging me on his knees, promising he'd change. I wanted to believe him, God, I did. But I couldn't live like this, walking on eggshells in my own home. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. I started noticing a car following me. To the grocery store, to my parents' house, even to the hairdresser. The same car, every time. My stomach twisted every time I saw it in the rearview mirror. I called the police, and they pulled the car over one day after I left the gym. Inside, they found a guy with a camera, a notebook full of my daily routines, and a file with my picture on top. He was a private detective, hired by Alex. I confronted Alex when I got home. A detective, Alex? Really? Is this what it's come to? He tried to explain, to justify himself, but I was done listening. You need help, Alex, but not from me. Get out of my house. We're done. He begged, pleaded, but I was firm. No, Alex. It's over. I'm filing for divorce. And just like that, the man I once loved was out of my life. The locks were changed, his stuff packed up and left on the porch. I was alone, truly alone, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The doorbell rang unexpectedly one afternoon, pulling me away from a pile of work. I sighed, not in the mood for visitors, but curiosity nudged me to check. Through the peephole, I saw Alex's mother, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands nervously clasped together. Reluctantly, I opened the door. Kimberly, can we talk? She asked, her voice shaky. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Sure, come in. The tension was palpable as we sat across from each other in the living room. I heard about everything. Alex told me. She started, avoiding my gaze. I crossed my arms, steeling myself. I'm guessing he didn't tell you everything, or you wouldn't be here. She sighed. He's my son, Kimberly. I just want to help him. To help you both, if I can. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping. Help? By convincing me to take back a man who hired a detective to spy on me? Who doesn't trust me? She flinched at the harshness of my words, but pressed on. He's sick, Kimberly. He needs therapy, not abandonment. And what about what I need? My voice rose, frustration boiling over. Do I just forget about my own peace of mind for Alex's sake? The room fell silent, the weight of our shared pain hanging heavy between us. I didn't know it was this bad, she finally whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. I sighed, the anger draining from me as I saw the genuine concern in her eyes. I can't be his keeper, his therapist. I've tried, but it's killing me. She nodded, understanding dawning on her face. I'm sorry, Kimberly. I truly am. I just wanted to fix things, but I see now that it's not my place. After his mom left, things didn't get quieter. If anything, they cranked up a notch. Alex started calling me, over and over. Sometimes it was just to check if I was home, other times he'd drop hints, asking if I was out with someone. Just wondering where you're at, he'd say, a thin veil of casualness in his voice. One evening, while I was trying to relax with a book, my phone buzzed. It was him, again. Hey, just checking in. You home tonight? Yeah, Alex, like I've been every night this week, I replied, my patience wearing thin. Alright, just asking. No need to get defensive, he shot back before hanging up. Not an hour later, I saw a shadow outside my window. Curious and a bit unnerved, I peeked through the blinds. There he was, Alex, just strolling back and forth like he had every right to be there, glancing towards my house every so often. My heart raced, a mix of fear and anger bubbling up. The next day, I called my grandma, needing someone to talk to, someone who'd understand. Kimberly, dear, you can't just wish this sort of thing away. He's shown you who he is. You need to protect yourself now, she advised, her tone serious. I know, but calling the police. It feels so final, I said, the words catching in my throat. Sometimes, final is what you need to be safe. Don't let your heart cloud your judgment, she urged, her concern palpable even through the phone. We talked a bit more, but by the end of the call, I was no more ready to dial the police than I had been before. It was a step I wasn't sure I could take, not yet. But with Alex's shadow looming larger and larger, I was running out of excuses not to. It was an ordinary afternoon until there was a knock at my door. Standing there was Alex's boss, Mr. Johnson, clutching a stack of documents. Is Alex here? I need him to see these, he said, looking past me as if expecting Alex to appear any second. No, he's not. He doesn't live here anymore, I explained, trying to hide the discomfort. But you can come in for a moment if you'd like. I can get him to call you? Mr. Johnson seemed surprised but accepted the offer. Well, sure. That'd be kind, thank you. As I put the kettle on for tea, chatting awkwardly about nothing in particular, a glow caught my eye through the kitchen window. It was bright, too bright. I rushed to the window, my heart dropping as I saw flames engulfing a car, Mr. Johnson's car. Without thinking, I ran outside, and there was Alex, a triumphant smile plastered across his face, watching the car burn. Look at how your lover's car is burning. That's for trying to replace me. He laughed, as if he'd done something heroic. I was speechless, horror-struck at the sight and his chilling laughter. Alex, what have you done? His grin faltered when Mr. Johnson came barreling out of the house, documents forgotten. My car? What the, Alex? The confusion and shock on his face mirrored my own. Alex's laughter died, his face draining of color as he realized who the car belonged to. I thought, he stammered, backing away as the reality of his actions hit him. Mr. Johnson was livid, his voice thundering. You thought what? That setting my car on fire was a good idea? You're done, Alex. Fired. Don't even think about showing up at the office again. Alex fell to his knees, pleading. Please, no, I didn't mean, I thought she was seeing someone. I got it all wrong. But Mr. Johnson was already dialing the police, his voice steady as he reported the arson. Alex's pleas fell on deaf ears. The courtroom was a stage set for drama, the air thick with anticipation and the weight of impending justice. Alex was there, handcuffed and looking nothing like the man I had married. Across the room, Mr. Johnson, Alex's former boss, sat with an unreadable expression, his presence a silent demand for accountability. Alex's mother, a frail figure overshadowed by the magnitude of the moment, was hunched over in her seat, her quiet sobs punctuating the tense silence. As the judge entered, the room fell into a deeper hush. She reviewed her notes briefly before addressing the court, her voice clear and devoid of any unnecessary warmth. Alexander James, you stand convicted of arson, harassment, and a series of related offenses. These actions not only endangered lives, but also violated the sanctity of personal freedom and trust. Alex's lawyer made a final, feeble plea for leniency, citing Alex's troubled past and the emotional turmoil he had suffered. Your Honor, my client has struggled with personal issues that contributed to his actions. We request consideration of these factors in your sentencing. The judge, however, remained unmoved. While the court acknowledges the defendant's personal challenges, it cannot condone actions that blatantly disregard the law and the well-being of others. Turning to Alex, she delivered the sentence. You are hereby sentenced to a term of imprisonment. Furthermore, you are ordered to maintain a distance of no less than 150 meters from Kimberly Thompson at all times. The gavel's fall echoed like a death knell for the life I once knew with Alex. His mother's cries filled the courtroom, a heartrending soundtrack to the closing of a painful chapter. As we filed out of the courtroom, Alex's mother approached me, her eyes brimming with tears. Kimberly, I don't know what to say. I'm so ashamed of what he's done to you, she stuttered, her voice breaking. Mrs. James, you don't need to apologize for Alex. This isn't your fault, I replied, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions within me. But I raised him. I should have seen the signs, done something to stop it, she insisted, her despair palpable. We both know Alex made his own choices. Blaming yourself won't change what happened, I said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. After the dust settled and I took stock of the wreckage left behind, it hit me hard. I was carrying around a lot more than just bad memories. Fear had seeped into my bones, coloring the way I saw the world and especially men. Acknowledging that was tough, but it was also the first step on a long road back to myself. I decided to see a psychologist, Dr. Lewis. The thought of spilling my guts to a stranger was daunting, but something had to change. Kimberly, it's good to see you. Dr. Lewis greeted me with a warm, reassuring smile during our first session. His office was a cozy, cluttered space, books and papers everywhere, making him seem more approachable somehow. Yeah, well, let's see if you still say that after a few sessions, I replied, half joking, half nervous about opening up. He chuckled, not missing a beat. I have a feeling we'll get along just fine. Tell me, what brings you here? So, I told him. About Alex, the fear, the inability to trust. It all came pouring out, messy and raw. Sounds like you've been through the ringer, Kimberly. But you're here, and that's what counts. We'll work through this together, Dr. Lewis assured me, his voice steady and kind. Session after session, I felt layers of fear and doubt slowly peeling away. It wasn't overnight magic, but with Dr. Lewis's help, I began to see light at the end of the tunnel. Feeling a bit more like myself, I returned to work. Sliding back into the rhythm of my job was easier than I thought it would be. My colleagues welcomed me with open arms, their support a balm on my still healing wounds. My grandmother, ever the wise sage, noticed the change in me too. You're looking more like yourself, Kimberly. I'm proud of you, you know. I smiled, leaning into her hug. Thanks, Grandma. I should have listened to you from the start. She waved me off, her usual mix of humility and stubbornness. Hush, child. You're here now, that's what matters. Just promise me you'll keep listening to those who care about you. I promise, Grandma. My name is Emma, a 28-year-old with a deep-rooted passion for antiquity and history, which I channel through my work as an antique dealer. My world was usually quiet, filled with the gentle rustle of pages and the soft clinks of ancient artifacts. That world expanded beautifully when I met Alex. He was a kindred spirit, someone who shared my love for the relics of the past. Our relationship blossomed quickly, woven together by shared interests and long, engaging conversations. One sunny afternoon, Alex, with a nervous smile, suggested it was time for me to meet his family. I remember feeling a flutter in my stomach, a mix of excitement and anxiety. I wanted to make a good impression, to show them the woman who had captured their son's heart. The day arrived, and I chose my outfit carefully, a vintage blue dress that complemented my eyes, hoping it would be a conversation starter about my love for all things historic. As we drove to his mother's house, Alex reassured me, "They're going to love you, just be yourself." The Harper family home was an old structure, its walls echoing with a sense of tradition and formality. I was introduced to Alex's family, his mother, Mrs. Harper, a woman with a commanding presence, his brothers, Ethan and Liam, and their wives, Chloe and Hannah. Dinner was served in a room that looked like something out of a period drama, with family portraits adorning the walls. As we sat down, Mrs. Harper, with a scrutinizing look, turned the conversation towards me. "So, Emma, Alex tells us you're in the antique business. How quaint. What exactly do you do?" Mrs. Harper asked, her tone polite but edged with something I couldn't place. I smiled, eager to share my passion. "Yes, I work in a family-owned antique shop. It's fascinating, really. We help preserve history, find homes for objects that have been part of someone's life." Mrs. Harper let out a loud laugh, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Preserving history, eh? Sounds to me more like you're a glorified junk dealer." The room fell into an awkward silence. Chloe and Hannah giggled subtly. I felt a flush of embarrassment creep up my cheeks. Alex, sitting beside me, stiffened. "Mom, Emma's work is important. She has a deep knowledge of history and art." Mrs. Harper waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, relax, Alex. I'm just making conversation." The dinner continued, with Mrs. Harper steering the conversation, often ignoring my attempts to join in. I felt like an outsider, struggling to find my place in this unfamiliar world. After dinner, while Alex was in another room, I found myself alone with Chloe and Hannah. "So, Emma, must be interesting, surrounded by all that old stuff," Chloe said, her voice dripping with something I couldn't quite identify as sincerity or sarcasm. "Yes, it's quite fulfilling," I replied, trying to keep the conversation light. "Every piece has its own story." Hannah smirked. "Well, I suppose someone has to do it. I prefer the modern and new, personally." Their thinly veiled condescension hung in the air, making the rest of the evening even more uncomfortable. That night, as I lay in bed, the echoes of the evening played in my mind. The laughter, the looks, the comments, they all pointed to a future where I might never quite fit in. It was the start of a journey I hadn't anticipated, one that would challenge my love for Alex and test my resolve in ways I never imagined. The day of our wedding was a whirlwind of emotions. Despite the initial discomfort with Alex's family, I held on to the hope that our wedding day would be different, a celebration of our love and union. I had chosen a classic, elegant gown, hoping to impress Mrs. Harper and maybe, just maybe, bridge the gap between us. As I walked down the aisle, my heart fluttered, not just with nerves about the lifelong commitment but also about fitting into Alex's family. The ceremony was beautiful, filled with laughter and tears, but it was the reception that brought my anxieties to the forefront. During the reception, as Alex and I mingled with guests, I noticed Mrs. Harper huddled with Chloe and Hannah, their heads close together, whispering. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, focusing instead on the joyous occasion. Later, as we sat at the head table, Mrs. Harper raised her glass for a toast. To Alex and Emma, may your life be as beautiful and unique as the antiques you cherish. The crowd laughed warmly, and I forced a smile, but Mrs. Harper's eyes held a glimmer of something else. After the toast, she leaned over to me, her voice low but clear. You do look lovely, Emma. Though I must say, Chloe and Hannah's dresses at their weddings were quite the talk of the town. Unique, just like them. I felt my smile falter, her words stinging more than I cared to admit. "Thank you, Mrs. Harper. I'm glad you think I look nice today." She nodded, her eyes scanning the room. "Of course, dear. It's important to keep up appearances, isn't it? Especially in a family like ours." The rest of the evening, I couldn't shake her words. They lingered in my mind, a reminder that I was being constantly compared and evaluated. As the night drew to a close, and guests started to leave, Alex noticed my subdued mood. "What's wrong, Emma? You seem a bit off." I hesitated, not wanting to spoil our special day. "It's nothing, just tired, I guess." He wrapped his arm around me. "It's been a long day, but a wonderful one. Don't let anything spoil it, okay?" I nodded, trying to push Mrs. Harper's comments to the back of my mind. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of a series of comparisons and subtle jabs. Life as Alex's wife was becoming increasingly challenging, especially with his mother, Mrs. Harper. She had a way of making me feel small and insignificant, a feeling that grew with every passing week. The most challenging part was the unannounced visits she started making to our apartment. One afternoon, while I was sorting through some antique jewelry for the shop, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Mrs. Harper standing there, an uninvited guest with a knack for finding faults. "Emma, dear, I thought I'd drop by. I was in the neighborhood," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. As she walked around our living room, her eyes scanned every corner, every piece of furniture. "You know, cleanliness is next to godliness," she remarked, running her finger along the mantelpiece and inspecting it for dust. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. "I do my best to keep the house clean, Mrs. Harper," she said softly. "It's just that Chloe and Hannah, they keep their homes immaculate. Perhaps you could learn a thing or two from them." Her words stung, and I struggled to maintain my composure. "I'll keep that in mind," I managed to say, though her constant comparisons were wearing me down. Alex walked in just then, and his face lit up seeing his mother. "Mom, what a pleasant surprise." Mrs. Harper smiled at him, the picture of affection. "Just checking in on you too. Making sure you're living comfortably." I watched as Alex chatted with her, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. After a while, Mrs. Harper left, but her presence lingered like a dark cloud. Later that evening, I decided to talk to Alex about it. "Alex, your mother's visits and comments are really getting to me. It feels like she's always judging me, comparing me to Chloe and Hannah." Alex looked surprised. "Really? I thought she was just being her usual self." "She means well, Emma." His dismissive response frustrated me. "It's not just harmless, Alex. It's constant criticism. It makes me feel like I'm not good enough." He sighed, a look of confusion on his face. "I guess I've never noticed it. That's just how Mom is. She criticizes everyone. Don't take it personally." The unannounced visits continued, each one leaving me feeling more drained than the last. My confidence began to wane, and I found myself questioning my worth, my abilities, even my marriage. One particular visit from Mrs. Harper left me reeling. She had walked into our kitchen, inspecting it with a critical eye. "Oh, Emma, these countertops are a mess. And look at this, are these last night's dishes?" I always taught my boys to marry women who could keep a tidy home. Her words cut deep, and I struggled to find a response. "I've been busy with work, Mrs. Harper. I haven't had a chance to clean up yet." She shook her head, her expression one of disappointment. "You should manage your time better, dear. A clean home is a happy home, after all." As she left, I felt a sense of defeat wash over me. It seemed no matter what I did, it would never be enough for Mrs. Harper. And with Alex's indifference to the situation, I felt increasingly isolated and misunderstood. The festive season was supposed to be a time of joy and celebration, but for me, it was tinged with anxiety. Mrs. Harper's announcement that we would all be celebrating Christmas at her house, with a specific instruction for each daughter-in-law to bring a dish, filled me with dread. Alex, ever eager to please his mother, had his own expectations. "Emma, you should make your beef Wellington. It's always a hit. We need to impress Mom this year," Alex said a few days before Christmas, his tone hinting at the importance he placed on his mother's opinion. I nodded, feeling the pressure. "Sure, I'll do my best." On Christmas Day, I carefully prepared the dish, putting extra effort into ensuring it was perfect. Arriving at Mrs. Harper's house, the atmosphere was festive, with decorations adorning every corner. Chloe and Hannah had already arrived, their dishes on display. As dinner commenced, Mrs. Harper began her ritual of tasting and commenting on each dish. "Chloe, this casserole is delightful, just like the one you made last year. And Hannah, this salad is so fresh and vibrant. You always know how to bring a healthy option to the table." Both Chloe and Hannah beamed under her praise, while I nervously awaited my turn. Finally, Mrs. Harper reached for a slice of my beef Wellington. The room fell silent as she chewed thoughtfully. Then she made a face, pushing the plate away. "This is bland, completely tasteless. Honestly, Emma, if you can't cook, you shouldn't bother trying." The room erupted in quiet giggles from Chloe and Hannah. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and hurt. Alex, who was seated next to me, said nothing, his eyes fixed on his plate. I tried to defend myself. "I'm sorry you didn't like it, Mrs. Harper. I followed the recipe exactly." Mrs. Harper waved her hand dismissively. "Well, next time leave the cooking to those who know how. This dish is more suited for the trash than a Christmas dinner." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I felt small and humiliated, my confidence shattered. Alex's lack of support only added to my sense of isolation. Later that night, back at our apartment, I confronted Alex. "Why didn't you say anything when your mother insulted my cooking? You saw how upset I was." Alex sighed, a look of frustration crossing his face. "Emma, that's just how Mom is. She doesn't mean any harm. You're taking this too seriously." "Too seriously? Alex, she humiliated me in front of everyone. And you just sat there?" I replied, my voice rising with emotion. Alex shook his head, his response a mix of indifference and annoyance. "You need to learn to let these things go. It's not worth getting upset over." But it was worth it to me. It was about respect, about being valued and supported, especially by the person who was supposed to be my partner. The tension that had been building up over the past few months seemed to culminate as Mrs. Harper's birthday approached. Alex, ever keen to stay in his mother's good graces, insisted that we needed to outdo his brothers with our gift. "Emma, this is important to Mom. We need to give her something that stands out, something that shows we care more," Alex said one evening as we discussed gift ideas. Reluctantly, I suggested an antique vase from our shop. It was exquisite, with a rich history that I thought would appeal to Mrs. Harper's taste. "It's beautiful and unique, just like her," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. Alex scrutinized the vase, his expression uncertain. "All right, but remember, how Mom reacts is on you." His words stung, but I brushed them aside, hoping the vase would somehow bridge the gap between Mrs. Harper and me. On the day of the birthday celebration, we arrived at Mrs. Harper's house, the vase carefully wrapped. The atmosphere was lively, with family members exchanging pleasantries. Chloe and Hannah had already presented their gifts, both receiving warm approval from Mrs. Harper. Finally, it was our turn. I unwrapped the vase, presenting it to Mrs. Harper with a hopeful smile. "Happy birthday, Mrs. Harper. We thought this would be a perfect addition to your collection." Mrs. Harper's expression changed from anticipation to disbelief as she examined the vase. "This? You think this old piece of glass is a suitable gift? Her voice was laced with contempt. I felt my heart sink. It's an antique, Mrs. Harper. It has a lot of historical value. But before I could say more, Mrs. Harper's anger boiled over. With a look of disgust, she hurled the vase to the ground, shattering it into countless pieces. I don't want this junk in my house. This is an insult. The room fell silent. I stood frozen, unable to believe what had just happened. Alex, who had been standing next to me, turned and said in a low voice, "You should leave, Emma. You've upset my mother enough." His words were like a final blow, stripping away any remaining hope I had of fitting into his family. Without a word, I turned and walked out of the house, the sound of the shattered vase echoing in my ears. Back at our apartment, I packed a few essentials, my mind racing with the events of the evening. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen table, a silent message to Alex that I could no longer endure this life. Later, when Alex called, his tone was incredulous. "Emma, you can't be serious. This is just a misunderstanding." But my decision was firm. "No, Alex. It's not a misunderstanding. It's the reality of how your family treats me, and how you let them. I can't live like this." Leaving Alex and the life I had tried to build with him was one of the hardest decisions I had ever made. But after the debacle at Mrs. Harper's birthday, I knew it was the only choice I had if I wanted to preserve my dignity and self-worth. I hadn't even finished unpacking in my new apartment when my phone rang. It was Mrs. Harper. "Emma, you never were a good match for my Alex. Just a junk dealer with no taste and no respect for your elders," she sneered as soon as I answered. I held the phone away from my ear, her harsh words echoing in my quiet living room. "Mrs. Harper, I think it's best if we don't speak to each other." I tried to keep my voice calm. She scoffed. "You could have learned a thing or two from Chloe and Hannah. They are the ideal wives for my sons. They understand family values." I hung up the phone, her words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. The call was a painful reminder of why leaving was the right decision. But what I didn't expect was running into Chloe and Hannah just a few days later at a local coffee shop. "Oh, look, it's Emma. How's the junk business?" Chloe taunted as they approached my table. Hannah chimed in with a sly smile, "We heard about the divorce. You know, you just had to play the game. Make Mrs. Harper happy, laugh at her jokes. It's not that hard." Their words stung, but I was no longer the woman who would take this silently. "I'm not like you two. I don't giggle and fawn over someone for personal gain. I have my integrity." Chloe laughed mockingly. "Integrity won't get you a nice inheritance." Hannah nodded in agreement. "Exactly. It's all about playing smart, Emma. You just didn't get it." I looked at them, two women who had surrendered their self-respect for material gains. "Enjoy your game then. I prefer to live a life where I don't have to lose myself for someone else's wealth." I left the coffee shop with a newfound sense of clarity. Their candid admission was shocking but not surprising. It reaffirmed my belief that I had made the right decision. Though the road ahead was uncertain and possibly challenging, I knew that I had chosen a path that upheld my values and respect for myself. Months had passed since I left Alex, and life had settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. I was at my antique shop, engrossed in restoring a vintage clock, when I overheard a couple of regular customers gossiping. "Poor Mrs. Harper, all alone with her health failing. None of her family wants anything to do with her," one said. "Yes, I heard she's been complaining that her sons and their wives have abandoned her," added the other. Their words stirred a mix of emotions in me, but pity wasn't one of them. The next day, as I was sifting through some old letters in the shop, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Mrs. Harper's number. Taking a deep breath, I answered. "Emma, it's me, Mrs. Harper. I'm ill, very ill." No one is here to help me, not even my own sons. Her voice was weak, quivering with a blend of desperation and self-pity. I'm sorry to hear that, Mrs. Harper, but why are you calling me? I'm no longer part of your family, I replied, my tone neutral. But you were once. You're the only one I can turn to now. My sons, their wives, they don't care. They insult me, ignore me, she said, her voice cracking. I couldn't help but let out a short laugh. Mrs. Harper, do you remember how you treated me? How you insulted and belittled me at every turn? There was a pause on the other end, and then she said, but I'm family. You have a duty to help me. No, Mrs. Harper. I had a duty to your son, which ended when our marriage did, I responded, my patience wearing thin. And let's not forget the antique vase you smashed at your birthday. That vase was worth thousands. Thousands that you owe me, I added. There was a sharp intake of breath from her end. That vase? That was just an old piece of glass. That old piece of glass was a valuable antique. You owe me $5,000 for it, I said firmly. Mrs. Harper was silent for a moment, and then I heard her coughing. $5,000? I don't have that kind of money. That's not my problem, Mrs. Harper. You should have thought about that before you destroyed it, I replied. The call ended shortly after, with Mrs. Harper's pleas turning into bitter mumbles. I hung up the phone, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. Mrs. Harper was reaping the consequences of her actions, alienated by her own family due to her harsh and critical nature. Life after my divorce from Alex had settled into a peaceful routine, centered around the antique shop, which had become my sanctuary. I was content in my little world of timeless treasures until one autumn day brought an unexpected twist. While enjoying a quiet cup of coffee at a local cafe, I overheard a conversation between two patrons. Poor Mrs. Harper, one said. Her own children sent her to a nursing home against her will. Can you imagine? The irony of Mrs. Harper's situation wasn't lost on me. The woman who once wielded control over her family with sharp words and criticisms was now at the mercy of their decisions. A few days later, fate played its hand. As I walked down a bustling street, lost in thought about an upcoming auction, I bumped into someone. It was Alex. His face twisted into a look of contempt upon seeing me. Emma, the ungrateful, he sneered quietly, yet with venom in his voice. Taken aback by his bitterness, but not intimidated, I responded, ungrateful? That's a bit rich coming from you, Alex. What's that supposed to mean? He retorted, his voice rising. Realizing we were attracting attention, I decided it was time to set the record straight. Well, considering you and your brothers put your mother in a nursing home, refusing to care for her, you're hardly one to talk about gratitude. His face flushed with anger and embarrassment as passers-by began to take notice. That was a family decision. You have no right to judge. I have every right when you call me ungrateful, I shot back. Seems to me like you abandoned the woman who needed you most. Where's your gratitude and respect for her? Alex's expression faltered, a mix of shame and anger. He glanced around, noticing the curious and disapproving looks from the people around us. Without another word, he turned on his heel and hurried away, leaving me standing there, a mixture of relief and triumph washing over me. I continued my walk, the encounter leaving me with a sense of closure. The final chapter with Alex and his family had ended, not with a whimper, but with a revelation of their true colors. Later, as I sat in my cozy apartment, surrounded by relics of the past, I reflected on how much I had grown. The Emma who once sought approval and acceptance from Alex and his family was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who stood her ground, and who no longer tolerated disrespect.
I remember when I first moved into that small, cozy house with Mark, my husband. It felt like a dream, surrounded by a little garden and just a stone's throw away from his parents, George and Helen. I thought it was perfect, having family so close, but I didn't know then what I know now. Our son, Tommy, was just a year old then, a bundle of joy and endless energy. Mark was different back then, or maybe I just saw what I wanted to see. His parents, well, they seemed like the sweet old couple next door. I learned pretty fast how wrong I was. It started with small things. George and Helen would always pop by, asking for favors, borrowing things they never returned. I didn't mind at first, happy to help, but their true colors showed when I needed them. One afternoon, I was knee-deep in laundry and house chores, and Tommy was being particularly fussy. I called Helen, hoping she could watch him for an hour. "Rachel, dear, I wish I could." Helen's voice had that fake sugary tone, but George and I are just so worn out. You know, with our age and all. I understood or tried to, but not long after, I saw them heading out, all spruced up for one of their shopping sprees. It stung, but what could I say? Mark wasn't any help either. One evening, I tried talking to him about it. "Mark, do you think your parents could help out a bit more with Tommy? They always say they're tired, but—" He cut me off, his voice sharp. "Rachel, they're old. They don't owe us babysitting. Besides, can't you manage? Why are you always so needy?" His words hit me like a slap. Was I being unreasonable? I couldn't even tell anymore. Then there was my mom, the sweetest woman who ran her own bakery. She had this knack for baking the most delicious buns and pastries. George and Helen found out about her bakery, and suddenly they were there all the time, smiling and chatting, sweet as honey. "Rachel, darling, your mother is a gem," Helen would gush, as they left with bags of free-baked goods. I remember telling my mom, "You don't have to give them so much for free, Mom." But she just smiled. "It's fine, dear. It's not that much." I wanted to believe that, to believe in the goodness of people. But something in me was starting to see the cracks in this picture. Perfect family setup. I just didn't know how deep those cracks went, not yet. A couple of years have passed. The rhythm of my life had become a relentless march of duties and unmet expectations. Every day was a repetition of the last. Wake up before dawn, prepare breakfast, get Tommy ready, clean, cook, and try to snatch moments of rest in between. It was like being stuck in a whirlpool, spinning endlessly. I remember one morning, the sunlight barely peeking through the curtains, and Tommy's cries piercing the quiet. I rushed to his room, still groggy, only to find him wide awake and playful. "Mommy, play!" he exclaimed with a toothy grin. As much as I adored him, I was exhausted. "Just a little while, honey," I managed to say, mustering a smile. The day unfolded in its usual chaos. Between laundry piles and Tommy's games, I tried to keep up. The phone rang amidst this whirlwind, its shrill tones slicing through the noise. It was Helen, her voice laced with expectation. "Rachel, dear, could you come over and help me with some cleaning? My back is acting up again." I glanced at the mess in my own house, feeling a twinge of irritation. "Helen, I'm swamped here. Maybe another time?" There was a pause, heavy with disappointment. "Oh, I see. Well, never mind then," she said in a tone that suggested I had deeply wronged her. The guilt was immediate and overwhelming. Was I being selfish? But as I hung up, I looked around at my own home, my own life, all needing attention. That evening, Mark came home, his face set in a frown. "Mom's upset. She needed help, and you just blew her off." I felt my defenses rise. "Mark, I'm not just sitting around. I have our home and Tommy to take care of." He snorted. "Doesn't look like you're doing a great job. This place is a mess, and what's for dinner anyway?" His words stung, and I fought back tears. "I'm doing my best, Mark. I really am." He just shook his head and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling smaller than ever. The next day, I hoped for a reprieve, but it was not to be. George knocked on the door, his usual easygoing smile in place. "Rachel, I need a hand with fixing the shed. Lend me your toolbox." Despite the million things on my to-do list, I nodded and handed him the tools. "Sure, take what you need." As he walked away, I couldn't help but feel used. Was I nothing more than a resource to them? A convenience? The next morning, I woke up to Tommy's laughter and Mark's impatient grumbling. The day beckoned with its usual demands, but something in me had shifted. A tiny spark of rebellion, maybe, or just the stirrings of a long, dormant self. Reft. Whatever it was, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go on like this. As I made breakfast, I decided I would start taking small steps towards my own dreams again. It wouldn't be easy, but I had to try. For Tommy, for myself. The day that broke me started like any other, but by the time the sun set, my world had shifted irreversibly. I was in the middle of wrestling with a mountain of laundry when my phone buzzed. The screen flashed an unknown number. "Hello? Rachel? This is Mercy Hospital. Your mother had a heart attack. She's stable now, but you should come quickly." My heart plummeted. Mom? My rock, in the hospital. I needed to get to her. But Tommy. I called Helen in a panic. "Helen, it's Mom. She's in the hospital. I need to get there. Can you watch Tommy?" Her response was cold, detached. "Oh dear, that's bad. But we're just about to sit down for our TV show, and we're not really up for babysitting today. Unless, you can make it worth our while." "Worth your while? Helen, this is an emergency." "Well, $300 should cover it. We're missing our favorite show after all." I couldn't believe my ears. I hung up, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. How could they be so heartless? I dialed Mark next, hoping for some support, some understanding. "Mark, Mom's in the hospital. I need to go. Your parents want $300 to watch Tommy." His reaction was like a slap in the face. "Rachel, stop overreacting. It's just a heart attack, and Mom and Dad have a point. Their time is valuable." Valuable? My mother could be dying, and all you care about is a TV show and money? "Look, I'm busy at work." "Handle it, Rachel. And remember, my parents come first." His words echoed in my ears long after I hung up. I was alone in this, utterly alone. In a daze, I called my friend Lisa. "Lisa, I need help. It's my mom." She didn't hesitate. "I'll be right there. Go to your mom, Rachel. I've got Tommy." At the hospital, the stark white walls and the smell of antiseptic were overwhelming. I found my mom lying in a bed, pale but conscious. "Mom," I whispered, taking her hand. "Rachel, I'm okay," she murmured, though her voice was weak. The doctor pulled me aside. "She's stable, but she'll need care and supervision once she's home." Home! The word echoed in my mind. What was home now? A place where my struggles were invisible, my pain unacknowledged? I returned home late, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. I found Mark on the couch, indifferent. "Your mom okay?" he asked, not looking up from his phone. "She needs care. I might have to stay with her." He shrugged. "Do what you have to do. Just don't expect me to pick up your slack here." The days following Mom's heart attack were a blur of hospital visits and tough decisions. I spent every moment I could by her bedside, the fear of losing her a constant shadow. Amidst it all, the thought of going back to my old life with Mark and his parents felt impossible. One evening, as I sat beside Mom's hospital bed, her hand in mine, she whispered, "Rachel, I'm sorry for all this trouble." "Mom, don't be silly. You're not trouble. You're my mom. I'm staying with you, I said firmly, more to convince myself than her. She squeezed my hand, a silent thank you in her tired eyes. The next hurdle was telling Mark. I called him from the hospital parking lot, my heart pounding. Mark, I've made a decision. I'm moving in with Mom. She needs constant care. There was a pause, then a harsh laugh. You're kidding, right? What about your duties here? What about Tommy? Tommy's coming with me. And as for my duties, I think I've done more than enough. Mark's voice rose, sharp and accusing. You can't just abandon your family like this, Rachel. My family needs me, Mark. And right now, that's my mom and Tommy. His response was a string of angry words and accusations. But I held my ground. For the first time in a long time, I felt sure of my decision. Packing up my things, and Tommy's felt like shedding an old skin. Each item I placed in the suitcase was a step away from the life I had known, a life where I had felt invisible, unappreciated. Mark watched in silence, his anger simmering. As I zipped up the last bag, he finally exploded. So, that's it? You're choosing your mother over me? Over us? I looked him in the eye, my resolve steeling. I'm choosing to do what's right. You made your priorities clear. Now I'm making mine. The drive to Mom's was a mix of fear and relief. Fear of the unknown, of starting over. Relief at leaving behind a life that had become suffocating. Arriving at Mom's felt like coming home. A real home filled with love and care. I set up a small room for Tommy and started to settle into a routine of caring for Mom. Mom's health was improving, slowly but surely, and with each day, I felt a bit stronger, a bit more like the woman I used to be, the woman I wanted to be. Living with Mom and Tommy in her cozy, familiar house was like breathing fresh air after being underwater for too long. Each morning, I woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside and Tommy's giggles as he played with his grandma. But it wasn't all sunshine. The reality of my new life, especially the divorce, weighed heavily on me. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some old papers, Mom looked at me, concern etched on her face. Rachel, are you sure about the divorce? It's a big step. I nodded, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. I know, Mom. But staying with Mark, it was suffocating me. I need to find myself again. She reached out and squeezed my hand. I'm here for you, honey. Always. The divorce proceedings were tough. Mark was bitter, throwing accusations and trying to make things difficult. But I stood my ground. I wanted freedom, not just for me, but for Tommy too. One day, I received a call from my lawyer. Rachel, Mark is demanding full custody of Tommy, claiming you're an unfit mother. My heart raced with anger and fear. Unfit, because I chose to care for my sick mother? It's just a tactic, Rachel. Stay strong. The legal battles dragged on, but eventually, the divorce was finalized. I was granted full custody of Tommy, a relief that brought tears to my eyes. But with that relief came the daunting reality of single motherhood and the financial struggles ahead. I started helping Mom in the bakery, learning the ropes of the business. It was hard work, but fulfilling. The smell of fresh bread and pastries, the smiles on customers' faces. It was a world away from the life I had left behind. One evening, as we were closing up, Mom said, Rachel, you have a real talent for this. Maybe you should think about expanding the business, make it your own. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. Could I really do it? Was I capable of running a business? The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. I took a few online business courses, revamped the bakery's menu, and even started a small online presence. The bakery began to attract more customers, and our little venture started to bloom. Amidst all this, Tommy was thriving. He loved the bakery, often helping out with small tasks and charming the customers with his bright smile. One quiet evening, as I tucked Tommy into bed, he looked up at me with his big, innocent eyes. "Mommy, I like it here. Grandma's house is fun." I kissed his forehead, feeling a surge of love and protectiveness. "I'm glad, baby. Mommy likes it here too." Lying in bed that night, I reflected on the journey I had embarked upon. It was a new beginning, and I was ready to see where it would take us. Life at Mom's with Tommy was settling into a comfortable rhythm. The bakery was doing well, and Mom's health was steadily improving. But just when I thought I had left the past behind, it came crashing back in the most unexpected way. One evening, while I was going through the bakery's accounts, my phone rang. The screen flashed Mark's name, a name I hadn't seen in months. My heart skipped a beat. "Hello?" "Rachel, you need to come over. It's urgent." Mark's voice was frantic, a tone I hadn't heard from him before. "What happened? Is it Tommy?" Panic gripped me. "No, it's my mother. She's fallen and broken her leg. Dad can't lift her, and I can't handle this alone." I paused, memories of their indifference flooding back. "Mark, why are you calling me? We're divorced. Your parents aren't my responsibility anymore." He was almost shouting now. "You're the only one nearby who can help. Just come over, please." The desperation in his voice was hard to ignore, but the wounds were still fresh. "Mark, I can't. I have my own life now. You need to figure this out." He cursed under the breath. "So that's it. You're just going to leave us in this mess." "Mark, remember when my mom was in the hospital? Where were you and your parents then?" The line went silent for a moment. Then he hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Guilt, anger, relief. It was a harsh reminder of the life I had walked away from. The next day, Lisa came by the bakery. "Heard about Mark's mom. You okay?" I nodded, pouring us both a cup of coffee. "Yeah, I'm fine. It just brought back a lot of memories." Lisa sipped her coffee, her eyes full of understanding. "You did the right thing, Rachel. You can't keep bailing them out." I knew she was right, but it didn't stop the nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Had I become as cold and uncaring as they were? Weeks passed, and life went on. I heard through the grapevine that Mark's parents were struggling with caregivers, but I kept my distance. I had my own life to live, my own battles to fight. One night, as I tucked Tommy into bed, he asked, "Mommy, why don't we see Daddy anymore?" The question caught me off guard. Daddy and Mommy are living different lives now, but he still loves you, and so do I very much. "Okay, Mommy," he said, snuggling into his pillow. Several weeks had passed since that unexpected call from Mark. Life in the bakery with Mom and Tommy had become my new normal, a rhythm of early mornings and the comforting routine of baking. One morning, while arranging the pastries in the display, Mom mentioned casually, "I heard from Mrs. Green that Mark's been having a hard time with his parents. Seems like the nurses they hired don't stay long." I paused, a twinge of something, pity, maybe, flickering inside me. "Really? That's tough." Mom nodded. "Yes, apparently his mother's temper and his father's complaints are too much to handle." I sighed and continued with my work. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for Mark. But that part of my life was behind me now. The bakery had become my sanctuary, a place where I could pour my energy and creativity. The customers loved the new recipes I introduced, and their smiles were my daily reward. As I mixed dough for a batch of bread, Tommy came bouncing in fresh from school. "Mommy, guess what? I got a star on my math test?" I swept him up in a hug, his laughter filling the room. "That's amazing, Tommy! I'm so proud of you!" Mom watched us, her eyes shining with happiness. "You two are my everything," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Later that evening, after closing up the bakery, I sat with Mom, sipping tea. "Mom, this bakery, it's been a blessing. I don't think I could have made it without this place. Without you." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Rachel, you're stronger than you think. You've made a new life for yourself and Tommy. That's something to be proud of." As I lay in bed that night, I thought about my journey, the pain, the struggle, and the triumphs. I had come out on the other side, stronger and more self-assured. My life had taken a turn I never expected, but I had found happiness in places I never thought to look. I thought about Mark and his parents briefly, hoping they would find their way through their challenges. But my focus was here, with my son and my mother, in the life I had rebuilt from the ground up. Life moves on, and so had I. I had found joy in the simple things, the smell of fresh bread, Tommy's laughter, Mom's stories. I had learned to cherish these moments, knowing they were the real essence of life. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace. I had risen from the ashes of my old life, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held. It was a crisp morning at the bakery, the air filled with the scent of fresh bread and cinnamon. I was arranging the pastries when Mark's parents walked in, as if they were regular customers. The sight of them took me aback. "Rachel, dear, could we have a few of those delicious buns? On the house?" "Of course," Helen said with her usual presumptuous air. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I'm sorry, Helen George, but I can't give away pastries for free. You'll have to pay like everyone else." Their expressions soured. "Well, aren't you greedy now? No wonder our son divorced you," George sneered, and they left without another word, not even asking about Tommy. As they walked out, a wave of emotions washed over me, but I stood firm. It was a stark reminder of why I had made the choices I had. I was done being taken for granted, done being the doormat, done being the doormat. Later, as I was teaching Tommy how to knead dough, he looked up at me with his big, curious eyes. "Mommy, why were Grandma and Grandpa here? Why were they mean?" I hugged him close, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes, people don't understand that it's not nice to take advantage of others, but it's okay. We're doing just fine without them. He nodded, seemingly satisfied, and turned his attention back to the dough. That evening, after closing up the bakery, I sat with Mom over a cup of tea. "Mom, Mark's parents came in today. They haven't changed." Mom sighed, taking a sip of her tea. "Some people never do, dear. But you've grown so much. You're not the same person who would let them walk all over you." She was right. The journey I had embarked upon had changed me. I was stronger, more confident, and I had learned the hard lesson of standing up for myself. Reflecting on the past months, I realized how far I had come. From the ashes of a broken marriage and a life filled with doubt, I had risen. I had built a new life for myself and Tommy, a life filled with love, respect, and dignity.
I was born and raised in a place where the word small felt like an understatement. Our town was a dot on the map, a place you'd miss if you blinked while driving through. My parents were the hard-working sort, the kind who woke up before dawn and didn't hit the sack until the stars were high in the sky. Despite their backbreaking work, the dream of sending me off to university remained just that, a dream. Growing up, I learned the value of $1 and the weight of hard work. By the time I was old enough to work, I was more than ready to roll up my sleeves. My first job was slinging hash at the local diner, a greasy spoon that saw more locals than it did out-of-towners. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it paid the bills, or at least some of them. Anna, table 4 needs a refill on their coffee, and don't forget, the Hendersons like their pie with extra whipped cream. My boss, a stout man with a voice that could carry across the diner without the slightest effort, would often bellow. "Yes, sir," I'd reply, hustling over with the coffee pot in one hand and balancing a slice of pie in the other. The regulars were like clockwork, with their predictable orders and familiar faces. It was comforting, in a way, to know exactly what each day would bring. As time went by, I climbed the ranks from waitress to administrator, a title that sounded fancy but really meant I was juggling more responsibilities for slightly better pay. The diner became my second home, and the people there, my second family. Then, at 25, my life took a turn I never saw coming. I met Michael at the diner, of all places. He was unlike anyone I'd ever met, polished, educated, and with manners so fine they could have been straight out of a book. He stumbled into our little establishment one rainy afternoon, looking like he'd taken a wrong turn and ended up miles from where he meant to be. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice soft and hesitant. "Could I trouble you for a cup of coffee? And maybe some directions?" I couldn't help but smile. "Sure thing, sugar. Take a seat anywhere you like, and I'll be right with you." That cup of coffee turned into hours of conversation, and before I knew it, I was falling head over heels for this shy, awkward man who seemed to find solace in our quaint little diner. Michael worked for a consulting firm, a job that sounded as foreign to me as if he'd said he was an astronaut. He talked about his work with a passion that was infectious, and I found myself hanging on his every word. One day, fed up with his shyness and sensing he felt the same way about me, I took the plunge. "Michael, why don't we make this official? You and me, an item," I blurted out, my heart pounding in my chest. He looked at me, his eyes wide with surprise, before a slow smile spread across his face. "I thought you'd never ask," he said. It wasn't long before talk of marriage started to circulate. The ceremony was modest, but I didn't pursue luxury either. We were together, and that's the main thing. After Michael and I tied the knot, I thought the hardest part was behind us. I was dead wrong. If dealing with Mrs. Brown before was like navigating a minefield, living with her as my official mother-in-law was like being in the middle of an active war zone without any armor. It started small. Comments here, a snide remark there. But soon, it was like she had a checklist of everything she could possibly criticize about me, and she was ticking off boxes with glee. One evening, I was in the kitchen, trying to make dinner for Michael and me. I thought cooking his favorite meal would be a nice gesture. Mrs. Brown walked in, her eyes scanning the kitchen like she was looking for something to pounce on. "What on earth are you making? It smells like a garbage dump in here," she sneered, her nose wrinkled in disgust. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my cool. "It's Michael's favorite, spaghetti carbonara," she huffed, peering over my shoulder. "That's not how you make carbonara. You're ruining it. Here, let me show you how it's done." Before I knew it, she had elbowed her way in, taking over the stove. It wasn't just my cooking she had a problem with. Everything I did was under scrutiny. One day, she cornered me as I was cleaning the living room. "Anna, do you even know how to clean properly? Look at this dust. It's like you're not even trying. My son deserves to live in a clean house, not whatever this is," she barked, running her finger along the mantelpiece and showing me the speck of dust she'd found. I bit back a retort, my hands tightening around the dust cloth. "I'm doing the best I can, Mrs. Brown. I work too, you know." Her lips twisted into a mocking smile. "Oh, I know all about your job. But really, darling, waiting tables is hardly a career. You should be focusing on taking care of Michael, not gallivanting around a restaurant." The worst part wasn't even her words, it was how Michael reacted, or, more accurately, didn't react. He seemed to shrink whenever his mother started in on me, becoming that shy, awkward man I'd first met in the diner, unable to stand up to her. One night, after Mrs. Brown had gone on a tirade about how the dishes weren't washed to her standards, I confronted Michael. "Can't you see what she's doing? She's trying to make me look bad, Michael. You have to talk to her," I pleaded, my voice thick with frustration. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'll talk to her, okay? Just give it some time. She'll come around." But things didn't get better. They got worse. Mrs. Brown's presence in our lives felt like a constant shadow, darkening every moment of happiness we tried to share. She had an opinion on everything, from how much money I was making, a pittance, how can you expect to support a family on that, to how late I stayed at work. A wife should be at home, waiting for her husband, not out and about at all hours. One evening, Michael was on the phone in the kitchen, his voice a murmur. I caught bits and pieces, enough to know he was talking to his mom. I waited for him to finish, curious about their endless topics of conversation. As he hung up, I teased, "What's the secret today? World peace, or did you finally decide what color socks to wear tomorrow?" He chuckled, a bit uneasy. Just the usual. Mom's worried about the Henderson project I mentioned last week. She thinks I should handle it differently. I raised an eyebrow. "And since when did your mom become a consulting expert?" "It's not like that, Anna. She cares, you know? She's got a lot of life experience." "Sure, but does she have to have a say in every little detail of our lives?" I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice. Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know it seems like a lot, but she's all I have. We've been through so much together." I wanted to understand, I really did. But there was a difference between being close and being controlled. I decided to let it go, for the moment. A few days later, the reality of their bond slapped me in the face again. We were having dinner, just the two of us, a rarity these days. The conversation was light, the mood almost perfect, until his phone rang. One look at the caller ID, and I knew our peaceful dinner was about to be interrupted. "Sorry, I have to take this," Michael said, already standing up. "Let me guess, your mom?" I couldn't hide my annoyance. He winced. "Yeah, she's having trouble with her computer again. I told her I'd help." "And it has to be right now?" I asked, my voice rising. "She's waiting to Skype with her friend. It's important to her, Anna." I watched him go, torn between anger and sadness. This was our life now, me, Michael, and his invisible tether to his mother. Continuing from where we left off, the tension between Michael, his mother, and me found new ground, the topic of children. One evening, feeling a mix of hope and nerves, I brought it up. "Michael, I've been thinking, maybe it's time we started talking about having kids." Michael looked at me, his expression unreadable. "My mom, she's not happy about the idea," he said, almost apologetically. "And since when do we need her approval to start a family?" I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. "It's not about approval, Anna. She thinks we're not ready, that having kids will distract you from taking care of me and our home." I was flabbergasted. "Distract me? Michael, are you seriously telling me you agree with her?" He shuffled uncomfortably. I think she has a point. Maybe it is too early for us to think about children." His words felt like a betrayal. It wasn't just his mother's influence anymore, it was him choosing her side over our shared dreams. As I navigated the complexities of my marriage, weighed down by the shadow of my mother-in-law's influence, I realized I needed something for myself, a beacon of independence. That's when the idea of going back to school crept into my mind. Michael didn't mind, but he didn't support me either. He was only interested in how much money I would spend on my studies and how it would affect my employment. The decision to enroll was the easy part. Balancing work, school, and a tumultuous home life was a Herculean task. Nights became a blur of textbooks and diner shifts, with the added spice of Mrs. Brown's ever-watchful eye critiquing my every move. Spending all this time on your studies, neglecting your duties at home. Is that what a good wife does? Mrs. Brown's voice was like a needle, always pricking at my resolve. But I was above that. After years of juggling work and night classes, I finally graduated from university. It felt like a dream when I was offered a position at a top restaurant chain. The job was not only a step up for me professionally, but also came with a paycheck that far exceeded anything I had ever earned. I poured my heart and soul into my work, often staying late to ensure everything ran smoothly. This dedication to my career, however, took a toll on my relationship with Michael. One evening, after coming home later than usual, I found Michael lounging on the couch, absorbed in some game on TV. The house was a mess, and there was no sign of dinner. Exhausted, I dropped my bag and said, "Michael, could you help out a bit around here? Maybe start with dinner once in a while?" He barely glanced my way before replying, "Why? You're doing just fine on your own. Besides, I've been helping Mom with her bills and stuff. She needs me." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. Helping your mom? What about us? Our bills are piling up, and you're telling me you're giving your money to her? Michael turned off the TV and faced me, his expression one of defiance. "Yeah, I am. You're making more than enough now. My mom needs my support." I was floored. "So, what? I'm supposed to handle everything else on my own while you play mommy's little helper? Don't start, Anna. She's my mom. She needs me," he retorted, his tone final. The conversation spiraled from there. Our finances, once a shared responsibility, became a battleground. Michael stopped contributing to our joint account altogether, insisting that since I earned more, I should bear the financial burden alone. His visits to his mother's house became more frequent, leaving me to fend for myself at home. One night, as I sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills and takeout containers, I tried again. "Michael, we need to talk. This isn't working. I need you to pitch in, both financially and around the house." He shrugged, indifferent. "I told you, Anna, my mom comes first. You wanted this big job, so deal with the responsibilities that come with it." I was at my wit's end. "Your mom comes first? What about your wife? Remember me?" His response was cold, calculated. "If you're not happy, figure it out. I'm doing what I need to for my mom." The tension at home had reached a boiling point. Michael's constant absences and refusal to contribute had left me feeling more like a single person managing a household than a partner in a marriage. It wasn't just the physical and financial contributions that were lacking, it was the emotional support, the companionship, the partnership that marriage was supposed to be built on. It all came to a head one particularly stressful evening. I had just come back from a long shift, the weight of my day hanging heavily on my shoulders. The house was silent, Michael's presence notably absent yet again. A quick glance at the clock confirmed he was over at his mother's, a fact that stung more with each passing day. I dialed his number, my patience thinning. "Michael, where are you? It's nearly 10 p.m., I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, hey, Anna. I'm at Mom's. Lost track of time," he replied, his voice too casual for my liking. "Lost track of time? Really? Because it seems to me you've lost track of a lot more than that lately," I snapped back, frustration boiling over. "What's that supposed to mean?" he retorted, a defensive edge creeping into his tone. "It means that I'm here trying to keep our lives together while you're off playing dutiful son. It's not fair, Michael. It's not fair to me," I said, the words pouring out. There was a pause, a heavy silence that filled the space between us. "We'll talk when I get home," he said finally, before hanging up. But we didn't talk when he got home. Or the next day. The conversation we needed to have kept being pushed aside, buried under excuses and avoidance. The turning point came unexpectedly. I received a call from my mom, her voice shaky, on the other end of the line. "Anna, it's your dad. He's very ill." I promised her I'd be there as soon as I could. Hanging up, I turned to Michael, expecting some kind of support or understanding. Instead, his reaction left me floored. "Why would you go? You're not a doctor. What can you possibly do?" Michael asked, his tone more accusatory than concerned. I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. "He's my dad, Michael. He's sick. I need to be there, with my family." Michael shook his head, his stubbornness kicking in. "And what about your job? You're just gonna risk it all for an old man on his deathbed?" His words stung, a slap across my face. "How can you even say that? This is my father we're talking about." He was unmoved, his stance rigid. "I forbid you to go. We can't afford for you to lose your job over this." "Forbid me?" I echoed, my anger rising. "You can't forbid me from anything, especially not when it comes to my family." Without waiting for his response, I packed my bags and left. His words echoed in my ears, a bitter reminder of the gap that had grown between us. I drove to my parents' house with a heavy heart, torn between concern for my dad and outrage at Michael's callousness. The days that followed were a blur of hospital visits and helping Mom around the house. Dad was seriously ill, and being there for him, being a part of my family when they needed me most, felt right. It was where I needed to be, despite Michael's objections. When I finally returned home, the silence that greeted me was deafening. Michael's belongings were untouched, indicating he hadn't been home since I left. It was clear where he had been spending his time, his mother's house. Another conflict occurred after I returned home tired. There, in our living room, sat my mother-in-law, perched like a queen awaiting an audience. The look on her face told me this wasn't a social visit. My husband was there too, looking like he'd rather be anywhere but here. The tension was thick in the air. "Sit down, we need to talk," my mother-in-law commanded, her voice sharp, cutting through my weariness. I barely managed to suppress a sigh as I took a seat opposite them. I was too tired for whatever this was going to be. "It's about your neglect," she started, each word laced with disapproval. "You've been too caught up with work. This house is falling apart, and my son is being neglected. You need to change your ways, focus on what's important. If not, a divorce might be the only solution." Her words were like a slap in the face, but what stunned me more was my husband's reaction. He just sat there, nodding along to his mother's tirade as if I wasn't even in the room. I turned to him, searching for some sign of support, some hint that he'd stand up for us. But there was nothing. Just that passive acceptance of his mother's words. "You really believe that?" I asked him, my voice tired but laced with disbelief. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mom's got a point, Anna. You've been distant. Something's got to give." I looked from him to his mother, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. Was this really happening? Was I being given an ultimatum by the woman who had done nothing but make my life difficult since day one? And my husband, was he really siding with her over me, over us? I leaned back, my exhaustion momentarily forgotten, replaced by a clarity I hadn't felt in months. "You think I'm the problem here? That simplifying my life, quitting my job, and playing house will fix everything?" Neither of them said a word, their silence a loud affirmation of their stance. I shook my head, a weary laugh escaping me. "I'll think about what you've said," I told them, my voice calm, almost detached. They seemed taken aback by my response, probably expecting me to argue or break down. As I excused myself and headed to bed, leaving them in stunned silence, I felt a mix of fear and liberation. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time I was allowing myself to consider walking it on my own terms. But then a terrible thing happened. Dad died, unable to cope with his illness. The days following Dad's funeral were a blur. I went alone because Michael made it clear he wouldn't stand by me, even threatening divorce if I lingered with Mom during this tough time. When I got back, the sight that greeted me was colder than any words Michael had ever spoken. Divorce papers, already signed by him, were laid out on the kitchen table like some twisted welcome home gift. It didn't take me more than a heartbeat to decide. I signed them, feeling a mix of relief and a burning desire to start fresh wash over me. I didn't waste any time. I packed my things, organized Michael's into boxes, and texted him they were waiting for him. "Mom, it's done. I'm moving out," I told her over the phone, my voice steadier than I felt. "Oh, honey. Come stay with me. We'll figure this out together," she offered, her voice a beacon of hope in the storm. But I had a different plan brewing. "Actually, Mom, what do you think about buying a place together? Just us, a new start?" Her pause was brief, the idea taking root. "I think that's the best idea you've had in a long time. Let's do it." And so we did. Mom sold the house she'd inherited, and together we found a place that felt like a promise of better days. It was more spacious than anything I'd imagined, with rooms that whispered of new beginnings and a large living room that seemed to echo with future laughter and conversations. I used the money I'd saved, money that had once been ours but had grown into a testament to my independence. It covered the mortgage, making our new life not just a dream but a comfortable reality. "Our new home," Mom said, her arm around my shoulders as we looked around the empty living room, imagining the life we'd build. "Yeah, our fresh start. Just us, and no looking back," I replied, feeling the truth of my words down to my bones. Living with Mom in our new home, I began to feel the weight of the past lifting off my shoulders. Each morning brought a sense of possibility, a chance to build something new and wholly ours. Our days were filled with the mundane yet comforting tasks of setting up home, interspersed with moments of planning our future. It was a calm evening, just me and Mom enjoying some tea, when suddenly there was a knock at the door. Opening it, I couldn't believe my eyes. There stood my ex-husband Michael and his mom, as if they had any right to show up unannounced. Without waiting for an invitation, they barged in, looking around like they owned the place. Michael's mom, ever the bold one, wasted no time. "We've decided. We're moving in here with you tomorrow," she announced as if it was the most natural decision in the world. I couldn't help it, I burst into laughter. "Move in? Here? This is my house, not a free hotel for lost souls." Michael, trying to sound authoritative, chimed in. "Anna, I'm still your husband. I have a right to live in your house." The laughter that escaped me was half disbelief, half amusement. "Oh, Michael, dear, you're not my husband anymore. Remember those divorce papers you so graciously signed?" The color drained from his face. I thought you wouldn't sign them." "It was just to scare you," he stammered, looking more lost than ever. His mom, catching up to the conversation, turned her wrath towards him. "You fool. Why didn't you talk to me before doing something so stupid?" Watching them argue was like watching a soap opera unfold in my living room. But my patience was wearing thin. "Enough," I said firmly. "I want both of you out of my house and out of my life." But they weren't done yet. Michael's mom, in a last-ditch effort to salvage the situation, made an outrageous offer. "We're willing to forgive you, Anna. Come back to Michael, and we can talk about having a child." The audacity of her offer was the last straw. "Forgive me? For what, exactly?" "It's time for you two to leave. For good." As they realized I wasn't budging, Michael's mom played her final card. "We need money." Michael lost his job, and I couldn't help but laugh again. "You're asking me for money? After everything you've said and done?" "I think not." Finally, I showed them to the door, a wave of relief washing over me as it closed behind them. Turning back to Mom, we shared a look of disbelief before bursting into laughter. "That's the end of that chapter," I said, more to myself than to her. "Good riddance," Mom replied, her smile telling me she was just as relieved. From that day on, our focus was on building our new life, free from the shadows of the past. We made plans to pay off the mortgage on our new home, turning it into a place of joy and peace. As for Michael and his mother, last I heard, they were bouncing from one rental to another, always arguing about money. It was a fitting end for them, I suppose.
Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. I'm Emily Clark, a 30-year-old sales rep for Clark Industries, the company my parents built from scratch. I've always taken pride in my work, but my real joy comes from my personal life. I'm married to Michael, a man I fell head over heels for. Our home, a cozy 2-story house on Maple Street, symbolizes our life together. Or at least, it did until today. The sun was setting as I pulled into the driveway, returning from a week-long business trip. All I wanted was a hot shower and to collapse into Michael's arms. But as I approached the front door, my key wouldn't turn in the lock. Puzzled, I jiggled it, thinking it was just stuck. That's when the door flew open. "Emily, what in the world are you doing here?" Judith, my mother-in-law, stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of anger and disgust. "I live here, Judith. Why can't I get in? What's wrong with the lock?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You don't belong here anymore, you beggar." Judith's voice was harsh, her words slicing through me like a knife. "Judith, what are you talking about?" I was utterly confused. Instead of answering, Judith shoved a crumpled newspaper into my hands and slammed the door in my face. My heart was racing as I unfolded the paper. The headline was like a punch in the gut. "Clark Industries bankrupt, court seizes assets." I couldn't believe what I was reading. This had to be some kind of sick joke. Fumbling with my phone, I dialed Michael. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Michael, please tell me what's going on. Why was I locked out? What's this about the company going bankrupt?" His voice was cold, devoid of the warmth I was so used to. "Stop acting innocent, Emily. You and your family are finished. I don't have time for this." "Michael, please," I pleaded. "You heard me. You're nothing but a beggar now. Don't call me again." The line went dead. I stood there, frozen, the phone still pressed against my ear. Tears blurred my vision as the reality of his words sank in. My husband, the man I loved and trusted, had just turned his back on me. My family's company, the source of our livelihood, was apparently in ruins. And my own home, the place where I had felt safest, was now barred to me. The streetlights flickered on as I stumbled down the driveway, the newspaper clutched in my trembling hands. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed the comfort of my family. The walk to my parents' house was a blur. Each step felt heavier than the last, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and betrayal. As I reached the familiar front door of my childhood home, I braced myself. I was about to bring a storm into the peaceful lives of my parents, but I had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to. With a shaky hand, I rang the bell, the events of the evening replaying over and over in my head like a broken record. The door opened, and there stood my father, Richard Clark, his face lighting up as he saw me. But his smile faded when he saw the tears streaming down my cheeks. "Emily, my dear, what's wrong?" His voice was filled with concern. Through sobs, I handed him the newspaper, the words "bankrupt" and "seized" leaping out from the page. He took the paper, his eyes scanning the headline. A look of disbelief, then anger, crossed his face. "This is nonsense, Emily. Our company is doing well. This has to be some underhanded trick by a competitor. I'll get to the bottom of this." His words were meant to comfort, but the cold rejection from Michael and the hostility from Judith echoed in my mind, drowning out everything else. I had come home, but it felt like I had stepped into a nightmare, one where everything I had known and loved was being ripped away from me. As I sat at the kitchen table, my mother, Anne, made tea, her worried eyes never leaving my face. My father was already on the phone, his voice firm as he spoke to lawyers and contacts. But amidst the chaos, One question loomed large in my mind. How could everything have fallen apart so quickly? The night was long, filled with phone calls and whispered conversations. I was physically home, but my heart was locked out, left to shiver in the cold reality of betrayal and loss. The morning light filtered through the curtains, painting the room in soft hues. But the beauty of dawn did nothing to ease the turmoil in my heart. I hadn't slept a wink, my mind replaying the evening's events like a broken record. The disbelief still clung to me, a persistent fog that refused to lift. My parents were already up, moving around the house with a quiet urgency. The scent of coffee wafted from the kitchen, a small comfort in the midst of chaos. I dragged myself out of bed and headed downstairs, the weight of uncertainty heavy on my shoulders. "Good morning, Emily," my mom greeted me, her voice gentle. "Did you get any sleep?" I managed a weak smile. "Not really. How about you and Dad?" "We've been up, making calls. We're getting to the bottom of this," my dad said, his voice resolute. I poured myself a cup of coffee, the warmth of the mug somewhat soothing. "Thanks, Dad. I just don't understand how things could go so wrong so fast." My phone buzzed on the table, jarring the quiet of the morning. An unknown number flashed on the screen. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello? Emily Clark?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, a woman's voice tinged with an emotion I couldn't place. "Yes, speaking. Who is this?" "You don't know me, but I know a lot about you, and about your husband." I tensed, gripping the phone tighter. "What do you mean?" "I mean that Michael isn't the man you think he is. I have proof." My heart raced. "Proof of what?" "Meet me at the Oakwood Cafe at 11 a.m. I'll show you everything." "Wait, who are you?" But the line went dead. I stared at the phone, a sense of dread settling in my stomach. "Who was that?" my mom asked, concern etched on her face. "I don't know, but she said she has proof about Michael. I need to meet her." My dad frowned. "Emily, this could be a trap. We don't know who this person is." "I have to find out, Dad. If there's something about Michael I don't know, I need to know it." The clock seemed to move at a snail's pace as I waited for the meeting. Every scenario played out in my mind, each more unsettling than the last. As 11 a.m. drew closer, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I needed answers, and this mysterious woman claimed to have them. Oakwood Cafe was bustling with the lunchtime crowd when I arrived. I scanned the room, looking for someone who might be waiting for me. Then I saw her, sitting alone at a corner table. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Emily Clark?" she asked as I approached. "Yes, and you are?" Rachel Simmons." Her name clicked in my memory. She was Michael's ex-girlfriend, the one he left for me. "What do you want, Rachel?" She looked me straight in the eye. "To show you the truth. Look at these." She slid a few photos across the table. My breath caught as I looked at them. There was Michael, cozying up to a woman I didn't recognize. My heart sank. "That's not all," Rachel said, pulling out her phone. She played a recording. Michael's voice filled the air, cold and calculating. "I don't love her. Never did. It's all about the money. Once I get my hands on it, she's out of the picture." I couldn't listen anymore. The world seemed to spin around me. My husband, the man I trusted, had been using me all along. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Because he did the same to me," Rachel said, her voice steady. "And no one deserves to be used like that. Not even you." I stared at the photos and the phone, the reality of Michael's betrayal sinking in. My life, my marriage, it was all a lie, and now I was faced with the truth, cold and unyielding. "Thank you, Rachel," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I needed to see this. I walked out of the cafe, the images and words replaying in my mind. Michael had played me for a fool, but no more. It was time to confront the lie my life had become. And somehow, amidst the pain and betrayal, a flicker of determination took root. I would get through this, one step at a time. The drive to my parents' house was a blur. The trees and houses whizzed by as my mind raced back in time. It was strange how the present turmoil unearthed memories I thought were long buried. I remembered the day I met Michael like it was yesterday. It was at one of those high society parties my parents often dragged me to. "Emily, you look lovely tonight," my mom had said, adjusting my dress. "Try to mingle, dear. You never know who you might meet." And mingle I did, though reluctantly. That's when I saw him across the room. Michael. He was laughing at something, and I was struck by his charm. We got to talking, and it was like we clicked instantly. He was funny, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. It wasn't long before he asked me out, and I said yes without hesitation. I was swept up in the whirlwind romance. He was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, handsome, and he seemed to adore me. But there were signs. I remember his girlfriend at the time, Rachel. I saw her confront him once. She was crying, accusing him of using me for my family's money. "You only want her for her wealth," Rachel had yelled, tears streaming down her face. I had dismissed it as jealousy. Michael assured me she was just bitter about the breakup. I wanted to believe him, so I did. We got married in a lavish ceremony. It all seemed like a fairy tale. My parents were happy, I was happy, and life was good. Or so I thought. Now, with Rachel's revelation still fresh in my mind, I saw how blind I had been. I had ignored the warning signs, choosing to see only what I wanted. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, I braced myself. The once familiar place now seemed like a refuge from the storm that was my life. My parents were waiting for me, their faces etched with concern. "Emily, what's wrong?" my mom asked as I walked in. "I need to talk to you both. It's about Michael," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We sat in the living room, the place where so many family memories were made. Now it felt like the stage for a confession. "I met with Rachel today, Michael's ex-girlfriend," I began, my heart heavy. My dad's brow furrowed. "What did she want?" "She showed me things, Dad. Photos of Michael with another woman and a recording. He's been using me for my family's money. He never loved me." The words hung in the air, a painful truth I had to face. My mom reached out, taking my hand. "Oh, Emily, I'm so sorry. We never thought he would do something like this. I should have seen it. There were signs, but I ignored them." My dad's face hardened. "We'll get through this, Emily. We'll figure it out together." I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "I know. I just can't believe it's come to this." We sat in silence, the weight of betrayal and hurt filling the room. It was a moment of reckoning, a realization that the past was not what it seemed. But in that moment, surrounded by my parents, I also felt a sense of resolve. The journey ahead would be tough, but I wasn't alone. And with each step, I would find my way back to myself, to the life I deserved. A life free from lies and deception. With a heavy heart and a steely resolve, I returned to the house I once called home, my father beside me as a pillar of support. Judith, my mother-in-law, stood there with Michael, my husband. The moment they saw us, contempt painted their faces and the insults began. "You've got some nerve showing up here, Emily, especially after your family's company tanked," Judith sneered, her voice dripping with false pity. Michael joined in, his words sharp as knives. "Yeah, what are you now, Emily? A beggar at our doorstep?" I felt a pang of hurt, but I steeled myself. This was the same man who had pursued me relentlessly, who had broken up with his girlfriend to be with me, the man who had promised to love and cherish me. And here he was, showing his true colors, just like his mother, who had always been sweet as honey when I showered them with gifts. But my father, ever the calm in the storm, spoke up. Actually, the company is doing very well. The news about bankruptcy is nothing but a false rumor. The change in Judith and Michael's demeanor was almost instant. Their scornful expressions melted into ones of surprise and, dare I say, fear. But I had had enough of their games. "Michael, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. He tried to maintain his composure, but I could see the nervous flicker in his eyes. "I know about the affair, Michael. I've seen the photos. I've heard the recording of you admitting that you never loved me, that you were with me only for the money." I held up the evidence for him to see. The color drained from his face, and for a moment, he was speechless. Judith tried to step in, her voice laced with fake concern. "Now, Emily, let's not be hasty here." I cut her off. "This is between me and your son, Judith." Turning back to Michael, I continued, "I'm filing for divorce, and I will be seeking compensation for your betrayal." That's when Michael lost whatever composure he had left. "You can't do this to me. I'll claim half the house. It's mine too." But I wasn't the naive woman he thought he had married. "You won't get anything from me, Michael, not after what you've done." Their sneers had vanished, replaced by a dawning realization that their charade was over. I turned and walked out of the house, Dad by my side, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new battle, but I was ready for it. After the confrontation, Dad and I sat in his office. The room was quiet, but my mind was anything but. I was still reeling from everything, trying to process it all. Dad was looking through some papers, his expression serious. I knew he had something on his mind, something important. "Dad," I started, "what are we going to do about Michael's threat? He wants half of everything." Dad looked up from his papers, a small smile playing on his lips. "Emily, do you think I would have let you marry him without some insurance?" I was puzzled. "Insurance? What do you mean?" He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "I never fully trusted Michael. Call it a father's intuition, so I made sure to have a safety net." He handed me a stack of papers. As I skimmed through them, I realized what they were. Debt receipts, all under Michael's name, and the total was staggering. "I bought his debts a long time ago, Emily. It equals the value of half the house, maybe even more." I was speechless. My father had foreseen the possibility of betrayal and had prepared accordingly. It was both shocking and oddly comforting. "But why didn't you tell me before?" I asked, a mix of gratitude and surprise in my voice. "I hoped I was wrong about him," Dad replied, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I hoped you'd never need these." I hugged him, feeling a surge of love and appreciation. "Thank you, Dad. You're always looking out for me." He hugged me back. "Always, Emily, always." We talked more about the legalities and the next steps. It was going to be a battle, but with Dad's forethought and the evidence I had, we were on solid ground. As I left his office, I felt a renewed sense of strength. Michael and his family thought they could intimidate and bully me, but they had underestimated my resolve and my father's foresight. I was ready to fight back, and this time, I was not alone. Sitting at the small cafe, I sipped my coffee, watching the world go by. It had been a few months since the divorce was finalized. The court sessions were very dirty. Michael and Judith behaved extremely indecently. They cheated, lied, and accused me of all mortal sins. They themselves wanted to appear before the public as victims of circumstances. However, there was plenty of evidence of their dirty game. Michael got nothing, not even a penny from me. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. My best friend Sarah sat across from me, her eyes full of concern. "You okay, Em?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" I shrugged. "Life, I guess. Everything that happened." Sarah reached out, squeezing my hand. You're so strong, Em. Not everyone could have handled all that. I chuckled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Didn't have much choice, did I? You always have a choice, Em, she said firmly. You chose to stand up for yourself. That's what matters. Her words were comforting, but I still felt a void inside me. Everything I thought I knew about my life had been turned upside down. The bell over the cafe door jingled, and I turned to see a familiar face. It was Rachel, Michael's ex-girlfriend, the one who had warned me about him. She approached our table, hesitant. "Hi, Emily, can we talk?" I nodded, and she sat down. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." I studied her face. There was genuine remorse there. "It's not your fault, Rachel. He fooled us both." "I know, but still," she sighed. "I wish I had warned you sooner." Sarah watched the exchange, her brow furrowed. "It's a messed up situation," she commented. We talked for a while, the three of us. Rachel apologized again, and I accepted it. It was time to let go of the past. After Rachel left, Sarah turned to me. "So what now, Em?" I thought about it. The house was sold, the divorce was done, and the company was back on track. "I think it's time for a fresh start," I said, more to myself than to her. "Like what?" "I don't know yet. Maybe travel, see the world a bit, rediscover who I am, away from all this drama." Sarah smiled. "That sounds amazing, Em. You deserve it." I smiled back, feeling a spark of excitement for the first time in months. "Yeah, it does, doesn't it?" We finished our coffee, chatting about potential travel destinations and the adventures that awaited. As we left the cafe, I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Walking down the street, I felt the sun on my face and a gentle breeze in my hair. Life had thrown me a curveball, but I was still standing, stronger and wiser. It was time for new beginnings, time to explore and find happiness on my terms. As I walked, I realized that no matter what life threw at me, I had the strength to face it. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what it held. And with that thought, I stepped forward into my new life, ready for whatever came my way.